Alrighty, how's everybody doing? Okay, just here. Hey, Razalo, welcome aboard. Intel FX86, beep boop, and Captain Zap, welcome. Captain Crash, how are you doing? And Haas00312, thanks for the follow a couple of minutes ago. I saw that, don't worry. And yeah, couple of minutes delay there. Apologies for that. Hey, Step on the Ball, welcome. And Pancake King as well. Always glad to have you aboard. Lovely stuff. So, let me just quickly do a little bit of setup here. Actually, well, we can do a little here. Got to reduce the fuel load in the aircraft to just so we've got something to refuel, but it's not like completely full of fuel every time. Working on a fun display logic. I'll have a question later on about applying an alpha to a PNG for blending two images, but that's a later thing. Sure. And I don't actually remember how you maybe through Cairo compositing operations or something like that. Something along those lines would be how we go about it. Cool. Just to let me quickly check the audio levels here. Where do I have a button? That's gonna blow your ears out. So let's try this. Cool. So that's still a touch on the loud side. Let me put it like there. Good. Sim sounds okay. Well, I'm glad about that. Actually, in that case, let me do it like that. Cool. Now, let's see what happens. So, do let me know if the sim is too loud, too quiet, or one or the other. Don't tell me this was an Airbus. It isn't. Cool.
Jet pipe overheat. Jet pipe overheat.
Okay, they're about there. Pretty good for you guys, so it doesn't blow your ears out. And the detector failure test. Anybody want to know why there are two positions on this switch? So there's a warn and a fail. Any takers for what those are? Warning and failure notifications separately. Oh, sure. Yeah, but why are they separate? Maybe squib fail. So squibs would be normally tested through these guys. So these I still gotta implement because they require essentially the bottle system to be implemented. The reason is that these are designed, so the way that the fire detection system works is essentially it's a coaxial cable, right? So it's essentially two wires. There's a center lead, and then there's an outer jacket, and both of those are conductive. And in the middle of them, now they're tiny, of course, they're not. I'm just sort of showing them as giant. The way it works is the insulator in between is thermally sensitive, so whenever it gets fairly hot, the insulator is gonna reduce its resistance significantly, and it's essentially gonna close the circuit a little bit more readily. It's essentially reducing its resistance. And if there's an overheat condition in the respective zone, which for the engine fire loops is sort of the loops are basically sort of wired all the way around the engines inside. They're not obviously anywhere Yeah, it's a thermal dielectric, right? So it's a thermal type of semiconductor, which normally it's a fairly insulating thing at normal room temperatures, but above a certain temperature, it starts reducing its electrical resistance considerably. And so when the zone where that loop is gets too hot, it's usually placed in a place where it shouldn't get too hot. But if it does get too hot, it means fire's escaped outside of where we do want it to happen, which is inside of the combustors. And in that case, it's going to reduce the electrical resistance. But if the dielectric becomes essentially degraded, if it falls apart or degrades or there's a short circuit, you're going to end up with excessively low resistance. So what this does, so there's a control board inside of the fire detectors, which normally looks for a certain amount of resistance. It wants below a threshold, but not too low. And so that's what this does, is it essentially internally applies
Jet pipe
a
overheat.
it essentially closes a circuit in the detector loop to simulate a low resistance but not too low. What this does, but the circuit also detects excessively low resistance. So if there's just a complete dead short, then that means that the loop has failed. So what this does is it separately creates a short circuit inside of the detector loop, and temporarily, obviously, and then the detector circuit you're testing makes sure that it can actually detect that complete short, very little resistance at all, which would indicate that the loop's actually, shorted out and it's really not working at all. It's just detecting nothing. So that's what that is for. That's why you've got two switches here, and you got to test them separately. Okay, so go ahead and fire up the ZAPU. The reason for this message here, by the way, cross-site tune-in and operative. Normally, these CDUs themselves create radio tuning for their radios, which are back in the avionics band stuff. Normally, the radios or the CDUs only tune the on-site radios, and so with this kind of a state by default, this radio now cannot, or this CDU now can't tune the right side because radios are only listening for inputs from the right CDU. The way to get it, in case you have a right CDU failure, the way you do it, or the way you work around that, is you go and back here and you disable CDU2 tuning, and at that point, now CDU1 becomes tuning master for both sides, and the right CDU is now locked out completely. So if I go ahead and re-enable CDU2 tuning and turn on APU here, yes, and so there are two redundant loops inside of the engines. They're kind of prone to some misfires and potentially, nuisance cautions and alerts. And so it's been designed in such a way that only if both loops are reporting a fire or detecting a fire, then it's actually a genuine fire. Cool. Anyway, how do you work around a dead CDU or misbehaving CDU or something for whatever reason tuning doesn't work? Well, you go here and you turn off the CDU tuning for the respective sides. So if I switch over now, only CDU1 can tune radios and CDU2's is now completely disconnected. It can't do anything. Conversely, if I do it like this, then CDU1 is inhibited. And if I go ahead and kill both of them, now I am back to tuning over via the MFDs. And there's a fault state here, which I haven't implemented yet. I still got to do that. But when you've got everything in, when you inhibit all of them, you can actually do that. If you inhibited all tuning here, these should go, first of all, these should go blank. And second of all, the COM1 radio should switch over to 121.5. And basically, at this point, you can't tune anything anymore. Your radios are, nav radios are locked out, and the only whatever you've got, COM1 emergency tuned in. Yeah, you're basically, well, not quite in order. You're 121.5 emergency only at that point. Cool. Damn it. And there's no tuning capability on this CD before anybody asks. So even though there's a button here, This radio literally is not plumbed up to the respective data buses that have to be used to get to, what's the button on the bottom? That is for, I think, the IFE. Yeah, as for cabin Wi-Fi, you can disable that in reality. I still haven't implemented that button, and there's, just because of how, like, I don't have separate lamp for this button, so whenever it just happens as a feature or as a consequence of how it's arranged in the OBJ, it just happens to affect this lamp here as well. Just when I put the lamp in, it'll go away. It'll stop being. That's exactly what I use CDU3 for. Yeah, no, this guy can't do anything. Usually what they use CDU3 for is for data link stuff. Where you're going to usually have CDU3 sitting on the data link menu page, and that's it. Are we allowed to plug in our virtual laptop to the Ethernet port? Yeah, no, unfortunately, no, that's only for database updates. Well, it's only ever been used for database updates. These days, they plug them off into the USB port. Huh? Goran broke this again. Huh. Okay. Needs to be reworked. This used to be correctly aligned. He did some work with the panels here. And yeah. Yeah, that's some new 3D for the panels and stuff. Looking fresh. Don't go sticking dongles in weird Ethernet ports. That's how you update the databases. Yes, that's how you do it in reality. So there are two ways really to do it. Back in the day, it used to be done. You pull up a laptop, put in you've got some proprietary software on the laptop, and you hook it up with the Ethernet and do it that way. These days, or nowadays, many challengers have, I think it's either back here, I think it's over here, usually mounted in one of these panels. You're going to have what's called a database unit. We recommend going to 4K. What monitor am I using? La Capitana, I'm using a 32-inch BenQ, which is kind of garbage. Going to 4K, I like it, but, your mileage may vary. You need a powerful GPU to do it. Yeah. So the USB port over here, that is actually not plumbed up to the Avionics. That is simply to power any tablets. So there's another one over here as well. And all that is for is you'd have a suction cup, mounted over here as some sort of a tablet for the EFB for the pilot, and you'd use that. Sakura Hana, welcome aboard. How are you? Yeah, it's just for power. Before had a USB update, the Global Express used 7 floppy disks to update the nav data. Huh? Yeah, that's also a possibility. Floppy disks used to be used on the Boeing 747-400, if I remember right. Well, anyway, definitely 2 minutes have elapsed, so we can go ahead and throw on the packs here to get the cabin cooled off. Because it is plus 40 degrees. Because I've been, sitting out in the sun with the cabin closed off for hours and hours. Autotrust 767 BFS. I hope you're going. By the way, what library do you use for C++ fonts and images? Autotrust, so I'm not using, well, C++ fonts and images. For drawings, for all of this stuff that you see here, this is all vector graphics, and it's drawn using a library called Cairo. Well, not the 3D portion here, the synthetic vision, but the 2D portions here are drawn using Cairo for vector graphics, and the fonts themselves are handled by a library called FreeType. And FreeType integrates with Cairo as well, so all you have to do basically is just load a font in FreeType, hand it over to Cairo, and it'll generate a Cairo typeface for you, and then you can use Cairo operations for text manipulation, so things like, set a font face, set a font size. It automatically takes care of caching fonts and all that good stuff. I can do it, so it's pretty easy. I don't think it's all that complicated, to be honest. Initialize the library, load a font, that's it. load a TTF or OTF or whatever kind of TF you want. So yeah, right, what do we want to do here? I don't know, let's punch in some sort of a squawk code. 2536, sure, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna disable terrain here. Don't need you taking up CPU's time for me. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Autotrust 767. Okay. We want to do a lot of tests. Sure we want. We will turn on the hydraulics here. We got new rudder pedals here. So I'm gonna mash them down, pull the parking brake, release them. These rudder pedals are finally moving. The virtual FOE yanked the spoilers for you in lane, or is that the job of the pilot flying? That's the job of the pilot flying, Pancake King 78. Anything having to do with actual flight, so flight performance, you know, anything that might affect your flight performance or flight path, the first officer is not there for that. First officer or pilot monitoring, what they do really is for handling systems configuration. So your first officer or you know, co-pilot or whatever is mostly there to configure the overhead or any kind of, you know, functional tests and stuff that you don't personally. The only thing that they get delegated to or delegated on is flap selection, and they only do that on your command. So whenever you're telling them to set a flaps, that's what they do. But other than that, pilot flying is the person responsible for actually, you know, selecting the trajectory of the aircraft or anything having to do with the flight path. All they do, all the first officer does is to support you. So they'll configure, you know, PAX transitions. They'll set up, you know, seat belts and crap. Yeah, flaps operator. That's a good one. Yeah. Anyway, let's get a flight plan in here. I kind of have one memorized by heart that I wanted to fly today. CYQA, so we're going to be up in Canada. CYQA to CYUL. 238 miles. Sure. It doesn't have any SIDS here at this airport, so we'll skip that. I'm going to hop over to flight plan, and I'm going to go to Miglo. I think it's the name of the waypoint there. Then, that's the weird part about this flight plan. Does that responsibility split apply globally for all aircraft in the world? That's specifically a Challenger thing. So IntelliFX is generally most aircraft function this way. Hey, Jono Livingstone Seagull, welcome, welcome. IntelliFX is generally most aircraft are going to have a fairly similar kind of workload split. When we're talking, hey, Pleasantirish. Welcome, welcome. Generally, it's for most two-pilot aircraft, you're going to have the right-seater, or not necessarily the right-seater, but the pilot monitoring is going to take care of configuring the aircraft systems, so you can focus on actually pointing the aircraft in the direction it's supposed to go. Cool. So let's turn on these guys. Seatbelts and no smoking. Let's do a bunch of tests here. So we go ahead and check the cross-flow valve. Check that it opens and closes. That's all good. We want to make sure we got no pressurization fault lamps on. We can go in here. Normally we do the duct monitor test, which I still got to implement this whole duct loop, fire detection loop. We can go up into the anti-ice. I'm going to bring up the MFD so we can observe it. So we'll do a detector test. So detect it. So that is for the ice detector, and this is for wing anti-ice overheat.
Wing overheat.
That's all good. We'll do a test of the windshield heat system. There we go, 4 greens. That's all good. We can cancel all those. We'll arm the emergency exit lights. These we want on, these we want on. Or rather, we want the emergency exit lights armed. These guys we want on. We got the nav lights on. This is armed. That's all cool. And you can go in here, you can do engine vibration monitor testing. So we'll get amber vibes here, amber vibes there for the N2. And the oral warning test. That's all good. And then finally we'll do a lamp test here. So check that all the little lampy lamps come on. And of course then there's the second circuit as well. It's down. And of course you already know this, but there's a little trick with the thing here with this button with respect to the what they call the flight control panel, FCP in Collins speak, but it's the autopilot panel. And that if I test one side and then test the other circuit, they are going to light up two separate sets of lamps on each side of these buttons. And that's not because that's not for redundancy. That's actually trying to show you. Well, I mean the test is for redundancy, but the reason there's two lamps here is because the auto flight system, the Challenger, has a dual autopilot. So there are two autopilots. Yes, FCC ACT lights has a dual autopilot. So there are two autopilots. Well, actually there's four, but at any given time there are two autopilot computers active at any given time. And yes, we do actually simulate two separate autoflight computers. Flight control computers running at the same time. Actually, like four of them are running at the same time, but the output of two of them is being disregarded, and only two of them are linked into the actual airplane systems. And the two guys in each pair, they're talking to each other, and so they're referred to usually as the left or right. And what you've got, the two lamps here, what they signify is that each of the flight control computers has acknowledged a signal. So let's see, you saw that where the lamp turned on, didn't quite turn on at exactly the same time. That's because the two autopilot computers are talking to each other. So when I push a button here, there's a master side and then there's a slave side that's following the master. And so whenever it's currently I'm on the left side, so now the left side is the master computer, but they each acknowledge the lamp at a different rate, just because they're running asynchronously from each other. So they might, separately go ahead and acknowledge the signal independently. And then there's of course the fact that you can have them in separate modes. So when I turn on currently the left side is the master side because I haven't turned on transfer. And so I can turn off the flight director on the right, turn it back on, but if I turn on the flight director on the left, I'm going to turn off both of them because this one's currently the master side. If I transfer it over to the other side, now this guy's the master, so when I toggle his flight director, it's going to turn on both sides, and now the left side can toggle itself independently. And this actually becomes somewhat important during approach. So in approach mode, the flight directors are independent. So each flight control computer, normally in normal flight, the right flight director, if I go ahead and bring up this guy, you'll see here now it says FD1 on the right hand side. And if I go, and it doesn't say that over here, if I go and transfer to the other side, now this guy says FD2 in green, this guy doesn't say anything. So this means that this guy is the controlling side, this guy's the following side. But if I engage, well, if we were in approach mode, if we had an approach mode active, this would go away and they operate in fully independent mode. None of them would follow each other. And kill all the, come on, transfer over. There we go. Cool. Get rid of this, get rid of that. We got in trouble at Boeing for using master and slave terminology, facepalm. Slew fly, whatever. I'm not even going to get into that. Cool. So runway 18 is going to be our departure runway here. Can I check? I should have charts for the airport here. Yes, I do. Good stuff. 922 CYQ Muskoka, Ontario. So runway heading is 181. And the INSs have already aligned, so that's all nice. That's cool. They said in the event you have an active lateral vertical mode and an arm lateral, and you try to engage something else, the FCC acolytes will let you know that the FCCs have acknowledged the queued command. I never encountered a situation where I would load up, where I could load up the FCCs that much. Yeah, I could imagine how. I mean, they're not that slow. Cool. So here we got our cute little chart. So we got an elevation of, well, about 1,000 feet, right? So 900 feet. So just for giggles, I'm gonna set this over to 1,000, just so in case we need to. Actually, we don't really need to worry about quick returns, since this system is automatically gonna keep the departure airport pressurization unless we try to return back. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set our destination, which destination is 106. Yeah, 145, 145, 98. So give or take about 100 feet above sea level. So I'll wind you down about there. Cool. Rock and roll. So we got the parking brakes set. I actually want the chocks to go away. And so let's go ahead and have the first officer start talking to us a little bit. Just for now, checklists.
Flight compartment checklist. AC and DC electrons.
On.
Nav lights. Logo light.
Logo is off. Nav light is on.
Cockpit lights.
Our set at state time makes no difference.
Lamp test.
Lamp test was done.
Duct monitor.
Not simulated yet.
FMS database status.
We should check. We've got a current database. This operator at this checklist is based on what they do is they cycle the checklist or the database status in case there's anything left behind in the flight plan. Doing so will actually dump out whatever flight plan was in there. I've already got a flight plan programmed in, so I don't want to dump it out. So we'll say that it's good. We have done everything we need to.
FMS flight plan uplink. ATs.
Flight plan uplink, we've already done a manual flight plan entry. Actually, we can go ahead and do well, it's not really going to do a whole heck of a lot, but we can try and do a wind update if we got data link winds updated. Alright, I haven't actually loaded in the arrival yet, which I do want to do. Going to be a HAV 6 from Megalo. Yeah, there's not much happening in this arrival, so let's just go ahead and do a wind update again. Well, not much is happening because we don't have an arrival of runway yet. Cool. Megalo, Rito, and winds or whatever. Actually, I don't even want winds in there because I'm not flying real weather. There's a bug here. Interesting. I gotta note that down. Wind, leg wind, delete is misaligned on the right hand side. XX flight plan modification, because I'm not actually flying. So this one's similarly misaligned. So yeah. So leg wind update is generally, or leg wind stuff is just misaligned. Leg wind LSKs, yeah, let's call that LSKs, are misaligned with actual data lines. Good stuff. Yeah, new textures. It's starting to get filled in. Cool. Legs. There we go. That's the one I want. Cool. So that's all done.
Anti-skid.
Armed, and I can't test it because I got the parking brake pulled. I can release the parking brake. Yes, anti-skid is tested. Push and parking brake again. Go. You can't test the anti-skid with the parking brake set. There's micro switch in the parking brake which locks out the anti-skid control unit. Hey, boy. 7044. Welcome aboard. Malgren. Yep.
Nose door.
So at this point we shouldn't actually have pressurized hydraulics. That's why it's kind of out of alignment with the checklist here. You would check that, you've got a pilot standing outside, check and make sure that nobody's in the messing about with the nose gear compartment, because when you pressurize the hydraulic system, it's going to close the nose door if it was ever opened.
Hydraulic 3A pump.
Yeah, once on.
Brake pressure.
We would check that we got good brake pressure, 3000 psi.
Parking brake.
Is set.
Nose door.
Closed.
Hydraulic panel and pumps.
Checked. Auto and 3A
Electric
is
panel.
on. Electric panel we would check.
AC/DC utility switch.
And we could turn on the AC and DC utilities, or we can just leave them off until engine start.
Start ignition panel.
Is it okay to admit that on more than one occasion since your last stream I can't sleep because I'm stuck out contemplating? Oh my. Gosh, I hope it's just a airplane. Not a fan of this TTS. I mean, yeah, it's a crappy TTS, unfortunately. It's free, open source, so, whatever. That's what I got for Linux. Reminds me of Deck Talk. Yeah, probably. I think it's, in fact, the same algorithm. Start ignition panel, we want to make sure we got nothing on here.
Fuel panel.
Fuel panel, we want to make sure nothing's on.
APU LCD.
APU LCD is open.
10th stage isolation valve.
Open.
Packs.
On.
Air conditioning panel.
I want to just check that you've got everything set up the way you want. Cool.
Pressurization panel.
I'm gonna pull it down a little bit more. Pressurization panel is set. Everything is off. No faults.
Bleed air panel.
Bleed air is as expected. Everything else closed except for these two.
Supplemental ground wing anti-ice panel switch.
I have a pancake. I have a keybind for it. I just hit control space, but you can assign whatever you want, or you can use the commands up here in the checklist in the menu. But I've got it bound to a keybind. You can put it on the joystick or something.
Cowl anti-ice switches.
Now anti-ice switches are off.
Anti-ice panel.
Actually, what would we do? On or off? Yeah, we don't need them.
Emergency lights.
Checked and tested. Actually, emergency lights are checked and armed.
Passenger signs.
On.
ELT.
Armed.
Glare shield panel.
Is set. And
Crew
checked.
and passenger oxygen.
Yeah, we would check that we've got, since I've got this implemented now, you can actually mess about with it. You can see the mass flow when I do a flow test here. You can actually see it slightly decrease in pressure because we're bleeding off a little bit of, volume of oxygen in there. Also going to drop in pressure because the air is actually, the tank is cooling off since it's in the cabin, and I've chilled the cabin now. Well, he refused to move on if you didn't do the thing properly. No, Pancake King, it doesn't check for completeness. All it does is read the checklist to you. That's all it does.
DC warning panel.
And we'd also, check that we don't have the passenger oxygen system on, which would be, get a lamp here. Just now misaligned. Actually, no, not here. We want to make sure that this is set to normal. We don't have a CAS message about it. The masks being out. If I switch this over to the right here, we get the masks falling out and back. Too bad. On DC warning panel, we want to make sure that these two are not illuminated. They would be, but whatever.
CVR.
CVR will be testing it now. There's a button here for that.
Audio panels.
We check that we've got your audio panels set up the way you want them.
SPS system.
SPS would be, we need to test it. Yeah, checked it on. So SPS test would be your stall protection, which is down here.
Integrated standby instrument.
Want to make sure that we got it all set up the way you want, and it's on, and then the line, and then all the good stuff.
Clock.
Set.
FSI
Reset. EF is an ICAS. Just make sure that all the indications are within reason.
Main landing gear bay overheat.
You would do a test here, which is down here.
Gear bay overheat.
And then do the failure test.
TOS warning switches.
TOS and warning switches will be down here. We want to make sure that they're all guarded and not turned on, because that would change the configuration of the terrain awareness and warning system.
Pitch and roll disconnect.
Make sure that they're in.
Ground spoilers.
Are auto.
Thrust reversers.
Stowed.
Thrust levers.
Shut off.
Engine speed switches.
Engine speeds. Those are these down here. They're on.
Engine vibration check.
It's done.
Oral warning.
Done.
Smoke detector.
Is, where are you? There you are.
Smoke. Smoke.
Trims mock trim.
Trims, we want to have them turned on now. So you got to push them all. Now they don't light up. This is just printed text. For those not experienced with the main landing gear overheat system, it's a fire loop like the engines. But only one, and the loop sits right above the wheels, not the tires. You get a sense that the brakes are really hot. Yes, that the brakes are overheating. Well, and I mean, if the brakes are so hot that the rubbers caught fire, then the loops are going to overheat. In fact, I think you go down. If I go down like so, don't mind the the default X-plane tires for now. Those are going to go away. And yeah, there they are. There's the loop. Ford still got to fill in some 3D here, but that's the fire loop. There's another one over there. So, checklist, yes. Actually gonna pull it a little bit higher. About there is good. You'd also check your rudder and aileron trims and all that good stuff.
Yaw dampers.
Are engaged, so we don't have any message about that.
Reversionary inhibit switches.
We want to just make sure that they're all in normal. This is important because the landing gear, as you just saw, sits in a big bucket with very little airflow to absorb the heat. Yes. Looking more complete every stream. Yes, Souflyer.
IRS.
IRSs are aligned. Yes, they are.
CPDLC.
We don't have currently.
TCAS.
TCAS should do a test here. So go to there, and there. Come on.
TCAS system test okay.
ATs and clearance.
I would talk to ATC and everything. That's all good.
FMS flight plan. Window date perf.
Actually, got to do the perf here. So, perf init. I know it's 15 degrees currently because I've just reset the. Well, it actually says 13. So, I'm a liar. And I want to go to perf init. Actually, I want to first refuel because I don't have enough fuel for the trip. So call the fueler, bring up my interior refuel defuel panel. I'm gonna go and fire it up. And how much are we gonna put in there? I'm gonna do a preset here. I've got about 2,500 pounds on the airplane. I wanted to see you run out of fuel halfway through. I want to put on maybe an extra 2,000 pounds. So, fuel density, give or take, is about 6.7, right? Let me just bring up a little debug screen here so I can see. Fuel density is 6.72 pounds per gallon. So if I want to throw on an extra 2,000, I want an extra 300 gallons in here. So I just mash the preset button here, hit plus until it reads 300 here. It's going to accelerate, so keep an eye out for it. There it goes. Just bring it down a little bit. Thereabouts. Hit enter. Lock in the preset. The interior refuel defuel panel is the external refuel defuel panel on the CRJ. Interesting. Cool. So hit start on the fueler there. He's going to try and pump, but I've got all the shut-off valves closed. Shut-off valves closed. So I'm going to open up the left and the right. Left and the right. Do a quick high-level shut-off test. Go close this and let's get them rolling. Cool. So I'm going to put that over here to the left. Continue on down here. Actually, so calc fuel, we're going to have 4500 on board, approximately. Am I going to, yeah, I'm going to carry some payload, so I'm going to throw in my usual, I don't know, 750 pounds, something like that. We're going to be very light today. That's going to be an interesting, very, very sporty departure, for sure. We're going to say we've got, yeah, I don't know, 3 people on board. 200 pounds of whatever. And we're going to cruise up to flight level 370. It's a short flight, but it's going to be fairly sporty when I can make that a guarantee now. And you see the refueler, and if you're taking on very little fuel, it goes through the refuel pretty quick. You see right there, we're already halfway there. VNAV setup, that's all good. 300 Mach 0.80, Mach 0.80 300, descent VP at 3 degrees, rock and roll. I assume the fueler gets angry when he has to keep coming back if your math isn't great. That's a, yeah, usually toss on 1200 to get five people in bags. You got big people in there. Happen crash. But sure. Of course, you don't have to use the individual broken down initialization. If you want, you can just go ahead and throw on your own zero fuel weight. So, you're gonna be, 29,500. Sure, just go ahead and enter that. That disables the partial and stuff. Burk. Okay, fueler is done. Little gas pump there went away, so we're gonna go ahead and close that. I don't need him anymore, and off. That's all good. And this will momentarily finish up integrating up to 4,500 or something thereabouts. Is alternate cruise for the alternate? Yes. By default, I think, I'm trying to remember, it's by default 13,000 or do I pick it somehow? No, I think there's an auto algorithm that picks this up automatically if you don't enter anything. Cool.
Takeoff data.
Takeoff data. Just in Earth menu, takeoff. Already picked up the temperature. Pressure is going to be standard for now. And rock and roll. Yeah, that's looking good. What happens if you try to enter it without an alternate? Nothing much. Just takes it and sits there. Doesn't use it for anything.
Avionics charts.
Avionics and charts are set. That's all good. Yeah.
Flight instruments.
Flight instruments are actually, I'm going to set up a climb target error of 7,000 And we're gonna go also set up a speed here. 180. We're gonna go quick. Can change the per pax weight to yes. It's not in here. You can't. No, I actually no. You can. I think like 250 if I enter in there. Yeah, it does change the per passenger weight as well. You can also set it up in defaults. So this is normally it pulls up the automatic value, but you can change your defaults. Let's see, where are you? Rather than the first one. Yeah, there we go. Average passenger weight. If you change that, it'll change it for all subsequent new flight plans. Good stuff.
Departure briefing.
Completed.
Emergency
I'm just gonna
procedures.
go do a diverse departure just straight out and then turn to our destination or to the first waypoint. Emergency procedures were reviewed, sure.
Pins, covers, chocks.
So pins and covers and chocks are in or checked.
Cabin lights, water heaters, master seat.
Cabin lights, all that stuff is cabin stuff.
Flight compartment
No.
checklist complete.
We don't really care
Engine
about.
start checklist next.
Sweet. Let's get going. Just sitting here burning fuel. We don't want. So, get the engine start ready. What is the date today? No, not that. I want to bring up this. It's the 28th. So, even day for me. Looks a lot like a CRJ. To Bombardier make this plane. Bread Live, it's the other way around. This is what the CRJ was made from. So, cool. Yes, so this was a Challenger 650, but which is like 3 generations or so after the one that was the original basis for the CRJ, but CRJ is derived from a Challenger 601. Cool, so we got the beacon going, you got these guys going in here, got the parking brakes set. So let's go. Does this have one upgraded avionics? Yes. On Bread Live, I mean, look at it. It's got 4 big LCDs with synthetic vision on them. Yes, it does have upgraded avionics. It has basically all the bells and whistles you could want. Cool. So, before start.
Engine start checklist. Doors.
Are closed, no caution there.
Parking brake and pressure.
Parking brake is set, pressure is good.
Fuel quantity and balance.
Quantity and balance is checked, are looking good.
Beacon.
And beacon is on.
Fuel boost pumps.
On.
Ignition.
Arm B.
Engine to start.
So, let's spool them. Gotta hold the button for a little bit there. You can see as the N2 comes up, the hydraulic pump also kicks in, starts pressurizing the systems and everything. There we go, sufficient RPMs. Red Live, I'm sure you're gonna hear about this a lot more. Cool. Right engine is started. Do the left one. Can you hot start it? It's not easy to hot start. Hey, Pizza Mani, thanks for the follow. Or Pizza Manjay. Not managed yet. Yeah, it's difficult to hot start. And as soon as we are done here with as soon as the engine starts are complete, you're gonna see the new first officer kick into action. I've got him enabled. You can disable it, obviously. So, just sit here and do nothing.
After start actions.
He's gonna turn on the generators, turn on the AC utility, turn off the ignitions, 14 stage windshield heat, and set the flaps, arm the thrust reversers, turn on the nose wheel steering. You would encounter a hot start going on a quick turn, but not from a cold start. Good. So, ready to go. And also turned on the ATC here, the transponder over to altitude on. This here pole is very inconveniently placed. We would clip it with the wing if we just went straight on forward. I'm going to make a left turn right away. Do the after starts
Fuel system.
first, actually.
Engine. After start checklist. Generator 1 and 2.
Is on.
Ignition.
Off.
Packs.
On.
14th stage.
Open.
Cowl anti-ice.
Not required.
Flight controls.
We'll be testing those now. So do the flight control check. Left. Right. Uppy and downy. And left rudder. Right rudder. Thrust reversers and steering were pilot flying duties at your operators. Yeah, I guess.
Ground spoilers.
Our auto.
Flight spoilers.
Stowed.
Cowl anti-ice.
Recheck those, pull them in and stuff. I'm gonna actually skip through the
balance.
pre-flight stuff for the once a day stuff. Fuel balance is checked. Trims is set. And it's reset for takeoff.
Nose steer.
He is armed.
APR.
APR is armed. Where are you? This switch here. And we would do a test here actually. So yeah, check an arm. So we would go like this. APR 1 test okay. APR 2 test okay.
ADG unit.
Doing ADG unit test back here. Yeah, or fix that.
Supplemental ground wing anti-ice.
Just currently, we do a
Cowl
test of it.
anti-ice.
Don't worry about it. For now, that's off.
Wing anti-ice.
Is off. I don't want you in norm. Okay, well, whatever. Put you to norm. Make sure that we got no cautions about it.
14th stage isolation valve.
We would, right, yeah, we got to turn this on to be able to actually actuate the 14th stage valve, then turn off the wing anti-ice. Because if you don't, 14th stage doesn't work. This is a pressure operated valve. It needs bleed pressure in the 14th stage duct, which does not come on. Which is this guy here. Here's the isolation valve, so I can play around with it as much as I want. It needs bleed pressure on one or the other sides to actually be able to actuate the isolation valve. So we need to turn on the wing anti-ice, actuate the bleed valve, see that it opens and closes, and then we can go ahead and kill the anti-ice system.
Wing anti-ice.
So check it
ATS.
off. ATS, we would go push this, and now we should have N1 takeoff.
ATCT CAS.
Is LT on.
After start checklist complete. Taxi checklist next.
Cool. Rock and roll. So take a left turn right away. Turn on the taxi and recog lights here. Hopefully I'm not going to clip that wing. No, I don't think I am. That dude gonna run me over? Yeah, of course he is. It's X-Plane. Why do you have trucks running around on a taxiway? Who the hell made this? Oh man. Good stuff. So we do a taxi check here.
Taxi checklist. Taxi lights.
On.
Wing and cowl anti-ice.
Are not required.
Brakes and steering.
Checked.
Reverse thrust.
That'll be done once per day. Since this is the first flight of our day, do a reverse thrust test. Reversers go green, so that's all good. We'll stow back in.
If taxiing. Flaps.
are set for takeoff 20.
Altimeters.
Are set and cross-checked.
Radar weather.
Not simulated yet.
Takeoff briefing.
And it'll be review of the takeoff briefing there.
Taxi checklist complete. Before takeoff
Of course,
checklist
that dude's
next.
gonna run into me because whoever placed this truck here, I don't know what you were thinking, because anytime anybody's gonna taxi an aircraft on here, they're gonna run into your cute little truck. So great job. Sometimes less is more, and not having a truck here would have been much better. Cool, so we'll take a right here. Where am I flying today? Canada. So just a quick review here. So there we go. Toronto, isn't it? CYUL. I just remembered. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Montreal. I just remembered it by code. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go. So, neat thing is now I don't have to do anything on the overhead when lining up. So all I do is basically turn on the landing lights. So get that off there. Turn on the landing lights here for me, and first officer is gonna take it back to the factory. First officer is gonna take care of everything for me. So I'm just gonna let it happen here. So I'm gonna let it. We're gonna watch him. So first of all, anti-collision, probe heats, window heat, continuous ignition, and then you didn't see it. He actually did an anti-skid test earlier, and also turned on TARA. So before
takeoff checklist. Passenger signs.
Are line up as good as I can anyway. So passenger signs are on.
Anti-collision lights.
Is on.
Probes.
On.
Windshield heat.
Aye.
Wing and cowl anti-ice.
Not required.
Continuous ignition.
On.
ATCT CAS.
TARA.
Supplemental ground wing anti-ice panel.
Is out.
CAS takeoff config OK.
I gotta release the parking brake for that message to appear. There we go. Takeoff config OK.
Landing policy. Record lights.
Are on.
Before takeoff checklist complete. After takeoff checklist next.
Okay, let's go. I'm gonna arm LNAV and VNAV as well. And we're looking for 90.3 there on the engines. There's 90.12. There we go. 90.2. VR, there we go. Let's go ahead and rotate. Gears coming up. Gears coming up. Hit my button there. I'm just gonna put it up to about there on the attitude. Turn on the autopilot and go to flight level change. I'm not gonna change configuration until we're at least 1,000 feet above, so there we go. So now I'm gonna go ahead and roll the speed up to 30. Ask the first officer to get the flaps up. And as soon as I change the thrust target here, first officer is going to take care of the after takeoff flows. So
after takeoff actions.
So they're going to switch off the bleeds, switch them over to the engines, kill the APU, and kill the thrust reversers, and what else did you? I forgot. But basically, the airplane is now configured for flight. And I'm gonna also, at this point, the idea here is basically that you don't have to worry about it. All you do is you focus on flying the plane. And I'm gonna keep on climbing here. Just my stream crash for everyone. Map Bacon holographic. Is it collimated? Yes, it is. As in, it's properly projected forward at infinity is what they call that type of projection. So just roll up the altitude here. I'm actually going to go and give speed control to the FMS. So go in here, press on the perf menu page here, VNAV plan speed. And now the FMS is taking care of it. Just going to switch off the landing lights the rest of the way. And there we go. And I'm going to roll this up to our cruise altitude here, which is 370. There we go, 10,000 feet. So it's actually starting to accelerate. And actually don't want this page here. There's my flight plan. That's fairly barren at this point. And you see there's a big 100-mile gap from the last arrival waypoint to the target airport. Because in order for this arrival to actually make sense, which I bring up the arrival charts here, in order for this arrival to actually make sense, the arrival only goes from Miglo to Rito until you select a runway. As you can see, it diverges from here. So EPMOC has two different constraints depending on which runways you're going to be arriving at. Cabs as well. All the other stuff. Is the FMS feature complete? Pretty much, Jonah Livingstone Seagull. There's a little bit here and there that's missing, which I gotta, take care of. So right now there's some missing modes here for this cruise speed mode. Why is this button pushed in? So that's something I gotta take care of. It's essentially feature complete, Let's go ahead and get rid of you. What systems? Not much. The list is changing, ever changing, so not going to go into much detail here, but there's little bits and pieces here and there, but nothing major anymore. Cool, so that's all there. I'll get rid of, actually switch you over to standard, and we can turn off the passenger signs here. Let's go. Near, we're very impressed. This is an estimate when this add-on will be out. Slog Dog, we want it out before the year's out. So, hopefully before Christmas. Make a nice gift, I guess. Does the FO switch over to standard and start the clock for you? Why would the FO start the clock? And if they will switch over to standard if you have this here turned on, so left and right avionics sync altimeter setting, which by default will be on, so they will follow whatever you set on your pressurization panel here. So actually I'm going to bring up the right hand side altitude, and you can see if I change the left altimeter, right side follows me. So yes, the right side will follow you as well. Yes, weather radar is probably the biggest one. And why would they start a clock for you, Pancaking? Set it to standard as you pass the transition line. Yes, they will set to standard as well, obviously, because I was pushing the left standard button, and the right hand side also reads standard. Oh yes, they will. Flight timer clock. That starts automatically. Pancake here. What are the expected performance-wise? Probably difficult with the amount of texture not being complete. Map Bacon, it will be more graphically populated, I guess. So there's going to be more to look at, and our GPU target is actually higher. So for the PBM, the minimum we supported was a GTX 760 with 3 gigs of RAM. This is going to be minimum GTX 970, 4 gigs of RAM. other than that, actually, CPU-wise, this is faster than a TBM. This is lighter on the CPU usage than a TBM. Because here the avionics is completely under my control, so it is essentially completely custom and fully threaded out, and there's nothing, it doesn't really interact much with the X-plane main thread at all. So CPU-wise, this is actually lighter. Mind popping up the admin window? I mean, not that it's going to really show you much of anything, but sure, I mean, if that helps you, there you go. I can't make it larger. I'd have to change the UI scale, I guess. Yeah, most of it's actually drawing these displays, compositing them onto the panel texture. Flight loop barely does much of anything at all. But yeah, right now, because I am not in any weather, I'm running 60 FPS 4K. Yes, a little under a millisecond. Actually, yeah, I mean, I'm not flying online, so there's no penalty to go in, you know, double size and everything. Hey, where'd the window go? There it is. There you go. Was it a difficult task? It was more, well, not really. It's about structuring the basic design of the avionics and the systems in such a way that it's possible. How much CPU-generated data is it constantly uploaded to GPU? Does it come close to saturating or even need a considerable amount of bus bandwidth? The Intel FX86, it's probably the majority is eaten up by X-plane doing rendering. On our side, we do upload the displays 20 times a second, so that is not an insignificant amount, but it's not too terribly large. I haven't tried a VATSIM flight yet. I don't have a good VATSIM client for Linux right now, so zero place. But I mean, we have guys in the test team flying on VATSIM, and they're happy with it. I do fly it on Pilot Edge occasionally, and it's fine. Can you show us element forces? Bob and weave, what would that show you? Not entirely sure what that would demonstrate. I mean, the airplane has a flight model. Yes, it flies, hopefully performance very close to the real thing. Anyway, there's some stuff I gotta check here. So what approach shall we do? Shall we do one of these guys from the south or from the north? Well, let's do one from the north. That'll make it a somewhat more interesting flight, I guess. Aggregate result can be pronounced. I wonder if Tolas do a similar thing with their products because they run extremely well. Perhaps, I'm not sure. From the north. North it is then, because that's going to come over the city. Yeah, whatever. Will I do the ILS-2 for a left? Yes, ILS-2 for a left because the factory, Bombardier factory is down here south. This is the complex, I think, right? We exit Alpha 2, taxi back, and over uniform probably. I think the UI scaling might mid-flight actually works. GGXP. This was written in CC++. Yes, I believe it is. Now what Tolas doesn't do is they don't run completely custom, well, physics for all the systems. So they use X-plane stock engines with a lot of hacks on them. This thing doesn't. This is not just an animation, this is literally the output of the physics running in real time. That whiskey to their back lot. Whiskey, whiskey. Oh, I see. It's over there somewhere. Cool. So, yeah, this is just a visual output, but it literally, this physics is what's running the systems and thrust modeling and everything. So, yeah, there is literally the core jet nozzle exit speed is 1,068 knots. Because that's how a core jet works. It's really fast. Cool. So ILS 24 left, I think, is what you did previously. So let's do that. Or why not? Let's switch this over to plan mode. I bring it in a little bit closer. You can actually see. So when I put in, here we go, 1,000 feet to go. Yeah, we're climbing really steeply. We've got barely any weight on the airplane, so we're doing 1,500 feet up in flight level 370. And when it starts leveling out, when it switches over to altitude capture, VLS cap, Mach 0.80. Jono Livingstone Seagull, it's supersonic with respect to the outside air, but internally is actually speed of sound. So the core jet is flying out, yes, compared to the rest of the air around it, yes, it is supersonic, but because it is extremely hot, it's 500-degree air, it actually is coming out at the speed of speed of sound of the gas itself. So at 500 degrees Celsius, the speed of sound is about 1,050 knots. So it's essentially, it's a converging nozzle, so it's generating a speed of sound jet stream out of there. Yes. Okay, decelerating now, or rather no, it's just pulling back on the engines because we don't have to go push full gas. Good stuff. So when I put in the rest of the route here, you'll see it populated in the rest of the path. So if I go and select an ILS before and it put in a truckload of these points, and I can actually, you know, step through them and everything. So if we go to MFD Advanced here, I can actually step through the flight plan, check it all out, turn on if I want to see constraints and everything. So there's the final descent is going to be down to 3,210 knots. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And we're going to be coming in on vectors. So I'm going to go get rid of this. And currently tracking towards Miglo, so that's all good. And yeah, all the rest of the arrival there. Yeah, Pancake King, it's a little bit clumsy to be honest, but that's the way Collins designed it. There's nothing more I can do about that. I can't change the Avionics design. And it's pushed out the top of descent here. Previously it was before Miglo, now it's after Rito, because we're going to be, you know, flying so far out over the airport that we don't have to start descent too early. In fact, if I go and I can show you, so it's now already brought in the chart for the approach as well. And here's the arrival. This part is not to scale, so the airplane's going to appear when we come out of here after Igvud at Mach. That's when the scale is going to appear. And if we check the constraints, we can do that as well. So Mach is our first constraint, flight level 240 or below. That's for runways 24 left, right, and 28. And we got RB, nothing, abs, is 16 or below for runways 24. And Komau, Maitig, Agnag. Actually, Maitig has 9,000 or below. Agnag, no constraint. Titus, 210 4 or below. Maxaw, 210 between 4 and 3. 3 above, 4 below. Then there's Ovuvi, and there's a vectoring port. So basically, flight plan, the VNAV path is going to drop us off once we, I think, cross Maxaw or Titus, one of those. And it's going to capture at 3,000, and that's it. Then there's a discontinuity, and then we've got the approach. Yes, these are from Navgraph. Go to Livingstone Seagull. I've got a Navgraph account linked in here. So, we got the briefing part if we want to read that. Profile. Actually, I'm going to switch this over to normal mode instead of split chart mode. It's a little bit screwy. Got the full chart here. And then we got Sloka at 3,000. So 3,000 Sloka. Elnav is the final descent point, so final approach. Actually, no, that'd be the glide slope intercept, I think, is what the Maltese cross here means, but whatever. Or no, is the final approach? I keep forgetting which one to switch. Cool. Let's see if I... Yeah, okay, so this is not the final approach fix. ALNOV is the final approach fix. Yes, so it won't let me delete constraints on the final approach leg here. Can't alter those. I can alter any other constraints, but nothing more. Missed approach, IOA 02, so missed approach goes climb heading 237 heading to delta to distance 2 miles from IOA, so IOA 02. That's all checked. Climbing left turn to 3,000, heading 112. So there's a left turn to 112. I'm gonna make it large so you can easily see it. A left turn to 112, heading outbound YULVOR radial 144. So this is probably the radial of the course to fix leg, right? So there's a left turn to intercept to Vevsu and 114 heading, the 114 course to Vevsu and hold. That's all checked. Half is crossed, yeah. It's sort of, you know, rattled around in my brain. Cool. So we got a plan of action. Got only less than 20 miles to top the drop. Airplane is doing shallow banks here up at this kind of a high flight level. Or you can disable, you know. You don't want it annoying you with the synthetic vision up here. Your choice. Cool. Other than that, we've got the pressurization selector and everything. It's the FO call. That's where we're gonna hear him again. Le Capitano, yes. And generally, the first officer generally talks very little. I think it only ever spoke. For now, it only ever said anything when I was doing the after takeoff. When I was doing the after takeoff items. Other than that, it's only gonna then talk, we think, for the in range and the after shutdown. So it only talks like 3 times during the entire flight. I'm trying to make him, as far as possible, non-annoyingly mute, so he's not going to annoy you too much. Or it, really, because it's just a text-to-speech bot. Who's chatter in the future? B. Casper, probably not. You can generate your own, I'm pretty sure. Record. No, Le Capitano. Currently it's driven by text-to-speech. There we go. So, top of descent here. Check airport OAT. We're not going to do temperature compensation here, so disable that. And yeah, we got less than a minute to top a descent. We can go and put the first vertical constraint. Is actually the minimum. The first minimum constraint is 3,000. So we can roll this down all the way to 3,000. It's a pretty flat landscape around here. Hey, welcome, Tail West. Welcome, welcome. So I'm gonna put you over to the star. I'm gonna throw that over there, and we should appear 5 seconds to top a drop. There's our vertical profile, and there we go, starting the descent here. Well, falling down out of the sky. La Capitano, I'm not sure I do want to use a real human for it. Reason being, yes, got the most soothing voice. Reason being is that the checklists are read by text-to-speech, so you'd have checklists read in a different voice than the first officer telling you what they're doing, and that would get annoying really fast. Or I guess, yeah, it's ADC chatter. I think at least it would get annoying if you had two different kinds of voices talking to you. I might integrate a better text-to-speech system in the future. Haven't decided yet. TTS systems that don't suck are expensive, as in it costs you per letter read, and so they can become pricey really fast, or a pretty marginal feature, to be honest. Oh, there we go. Starting to appear. And you can see here we disappear immediately because this is out of scale. Talking about cruise, talking about the FO. Okay, yeah. Needs higher quality TTS. Can't wait for version 1.1. So you can see, even though we were already way past Miglo on the chart, we're just about here somewhere, just because this is not to scale, this portion, so it's hidden there. Once we get to Epmach, we should start appearing on that chart. So 240 or below. For Epmach there. I'm going to check that that is fulfilled. How's everybody doing? If they're cool on the agenda, they didn't catch the stream until now. Yeah, we're going to have the virtual flight first officer helping us out a little bit. We don't have to focus so hard on doing little busy work. You know, pushing buttons on the overhead and everything. Instead, it's going to do it for me. Look, Capitano, yeah, sure. Man, this part of the country is flat. And again, ain't got much terrain to run into. For the next flight, though, we're going to do an interesting one. Which I think you're going to like. Let me actually just check some path in here. That one is drilling over TBM streams. When we say copod, does it include voice feedback as well? Not sure what you mean. Voice feedback. How would that work? Please specify. I completed something to say something is done. Well, the first officer is only going to tell. So here, the idea is that it will only enunciate when it's trying to do something, and only fairly sensitive stuff. Generally, it's going to try and be quiet. I mean, you don't have your first officer telling you every little thing they're doing, because well, you expect that. We want to be 240 at FMOC, and we just about are going to be. As we pass a beam here, just as our wings here go beam the point, we should go flight level 240. There we go. Boom. Right on cue. It's basically trying to stay as high up along that constraint as it could. You know, it'll only talk to you when it's doing something interesting. Generally, we'll be quiet. I'm not trying to generate a bunch of chatter for you. It's really not the point. Can be a bit, let's say, annoying. Some add-ons tell me everything the automated. No. It's only going to tell you for well, it's going to do 4 callouts total per flight generally. Nothing more. You don't want it, of course. You can disable the sounds. There we go. That's taking care of that if you don't want it. But it's only going to tell you stuff it's doing when it's important. Let's do a descent checklist here.
After takeoff checklist.
Nah, not that one.
Descent checklist. Shoulder harness.
Shoulder harness is adjusted.
Passenger signs.
We're going to go to auto.
Pressurization
is set, and we're going to be landing sea level.
Fuel quantity and balance
is checked. Alright, we're going to be good.
FMS landing data charts.
Alright, I got to do the perf here for the arrival as well. So we're going to be landing at with 31,000 pounds. So it's going to be 15 degrees down there for now, because I'm flying with standard weather. And we're going to be 31,000. That's our V-speeds. Had a rough night last night. So how do the auto pack signs work? I never understood that. It's based around your flap position. When the flaps are out, the auto passenger signs come on.
Approach briefing.
Approach briefing is completed. It's going to be the ILS for 24 left. And that's basically all going to configure itself for us, so we don't have to do anything, which is lovely, because I wouldn't like to be lazy. And coming through standard pressure, we're just going to go standard for 2992. So that's all done.
VNAV transition flight
yes.
level.
El Capitano, I'm doing that, yes, with keybinds. VNAV transition flight level is not yet set. I'm going to do that. We're not implemented.
Checklist complete.
Okay,
in-range checklist next.
So you heard it say in-range checklist is going to be next. Hopefully you heard it. It does that. So the in-range checklist depends on us transitioning the packs onto the APU. Yes, you do this in flight on the Challenger. And so we're going to let the first officer, where am I going? To Montreal. Octavius. Hellenic Republic. I'm glad you like it, 777 Bob. So we're going to wait for the first officer to get everything in order for us, and then we're going to do the in-range checklist once everything is done there. At this point, it's basically just sit back and wait. Not like they got to fly a multi-million-dollar jet into exciting places. Yeah. I mean, he is a pretty poor text-to-speech system. So he's trying his best. I don't even need the synthetic vision here. It's perfectly fine. There's a little there for our next flight. That'll be interesting. Interesting for sure. So you saw the dashed blue PDI. That means we're within 30 miles of the airport, and the auto nav to nav transition system has prepared a transition onto the ILS there. So it's pre-tuned both sides, pre-tuned both nav radios to the appropriate course here, or sorry, the appropriate frequency, 110.5. We can confirm that. 110.5. That's all good. You'll see that currently it still says course 000. That's fine, we're going to leave it. It's going to swap it over on its own automatically. Built-in text-to-speech, Microsoft, James, and Windows sounds like a gazillion bucks. Yes, Tarburnum, it is using the, on Windows and Mac, we're using the built-in one. On Linux, I'm using a system called Festival, which fortunately ain't very good. I don't know, should I put in Google text-to-speech? I mean, of course you guys are going to say yes, but Google text-to-speech is not cheap. I also need to, yeah, I don't know. Glad you like it, that Otter Josh. So, airplane's starting to decelerate there. You can see it's pulling back the speed. Maybe later down the line when sales go well. We'll see, look Capitano, we'll see. And yeah, this is how a Challenger slows down. It basically just pulls the power and just sort of yellows it in. Okay, waiting. You might be able to hear the fact that the wind is actually dying down, the wind noise, because of the fact that we're slowing down, obviously. One of the main noises that you hear in flight is actually the wind rushing by the windows here. There we go. Next turn. Turn of events. So, we're going to be flying downwind here momentarily. Right by the airport. There's the airport. What an eyesore. Default X-plane textures, huh? You don't have to pay for each new airframe. Can come with improved TTS. Yes. Check out downloadable voices in both when purchasing this add-on, because some voices are actually quite good, especially British and Australian ones. Cool, 250 knots, 10K. That constraint is met. Support tickets that the wind sound is too loud and you cannot hear the engines enough. Yeah, that'll be one. You're a loud girl. But flying so fast then. Yes, 300 knots is fairly noisy. You can go out to 350 knots, but you know, expect very loud flight in that kind of a condition. So, here we go. Maybe?
In range, starting APU.
There we go. Push, push. And it's switched on the passenger signs to on now. So they were in auto. He switched them over to on. And APU's coming on. Is it the design of the nose that makes it so loud? Well, 777, yeah, any aircraft. Overhead this week. Damn, she is loud indeed, but sounds so good. Huge difference between 737 and A320 when it comes to noise design. Cool. APU is available. I'm gonna let him do his thing. So, I've started my own timer just to watch. In 2 minutes, after 2 minutes has elapsed, the first officer is gonna put us onto bleeds from the APU. So there's a 2-minute warm-up time for the bleeds. All I gotta do now is just focus on my flying. So all I'm doing is just making sure we meet all the constraints there. The idea is that you don't have to focus on the systems. On the engine that help. So we're slowing down to the next constraint. So there's a speed constraint at Titus of 210. And so the aircraft is now starting to pull back on the power. Do you have to have the bleed on the AP for takeoff lane, or are you allowed to leave them on? Yes, you can. You can leave the APU. You can leave the bleeds on the APU. Now, the default first officer is going to always use the bleeds from the APU, but if you turn them off, you can do whatever you want. Airplane's slowing down nicely. Glide slope's having a bit of a party there, because we are way off angle from the runway, so it's doing crazy stuff. So coming up to 2 minutes, and you'll see the first officer configure us for approach. I'm watching him just for years' sake, but generally you're not supposed to need to babysit him.
Transition and bleeds onto APU.
So, generator on. Reconfiguring the bleeds there. Alrighty. And with that, we are in range configured. So, we can start the in range checklist.
In range checklist. APU.
On.
Altimeters.
We check and cross check.
Avionics.
Set.
External lights.
Our pulse
N1 target.
is, we gotta actually make sure it's in climb. Yes, it is.
APU PAX transition.
Complete it.
APU generator.
On.
CAS.
We would check the CAS. Checked.
In range checklist complete.
Okay, there you go. I didn't have to do anything. That's the entire idea of the automated first officer. You can take care of what you're really not supposed to focus on in reality. Even up to arm the lights. When it's that, will it try to capture IRL? Yes. Well, it will. For most autopilots, modern autopilots, are fairly resistant to that. Okay, there we go. We're coming up to, yeah, no V-path vector. So we're coming up to the vector portion. So it's dropped us off the V-path here. I'm just going to let it capture 3000 here at this current pitch, and we'll just let it go. Tourbillon M, most modern autopilots will not let you capture glide slope if you are off the localizer. So they'll only capture once the localizer is centered. They are fairly resistant to that nowadays. Same thing on the Challenger. There we go, VLS cap. Thank you. So I'm not going to let it fly on the vectors here for a long time. I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to the approach. Now, in reality, and same thing here, you cannot clear this discontinuity. It's going to tell you invalid delete. If you try and do this, it will say invalid entry. There's a vectoring leg generates a forced discontinuity. You can't get rid of it other than by skipping it, basically. So I'm just going to go to the first point on the approach. So, go to Sloka, rect, enter. Now, why did you want to accelerate airplane? Something I got to fix. It shouldn't try to accelerate there. Good stuff. And the idea here is, again, with the first officer, is so I don't have to do anything. Or rather, I don't have to mess about with the airplane. Just focus on pointing it in the right direction. Alrighty. So, say we were cleared for the approach, so go ahead and arm approach here. So now we got approach, localizer, and glide slope armed in white here. Obviously everything is green on the HUD. And all we gotta do now is wait. I'm also gonna go ahead and decelerate to 180. And I'm gonna ask for flaps 1. Or, well, flaps 20 in this case. And when the airplane is established on the center line there, it's gonna switch over automatically to, it's telling me check LCL because it wants to descend further down on the V path. I'm not gonna let it. We're gonna switch it over to green needles, which since I've armed approach mode, it knows it's on an ILS approach. So as soon as I direct to picked up the inbound course to slope. It's not correct. No, it was going to. So it would only do runway track if this was a final approach fix. Final approach fixes you cannot go simply direct to. You sort of can, but not. You're not really supposed to. Final approach fixes are special in that you're supposed to be centered already on them. So this is called a center fix. That's why this is allowed. Okay, and there we go. Localizer capture, and it's already switched over to green needles on its own. Armed glide slope. Rather, glide slope is still armed. Yoke. This is going to be the add-on once it's get released. No quote for the marketing should be you had me at blood oxygen levels. So there we go. Doing 180. I could have delayed the decel actually a little bit further. I'm going to switch the chart over to the approach. Now we're looking at the approach chart there. Nothing too interesting, but there it is. And glide slope's captured. Missed approach is 3,000, so that's already set. Nothing changing there. You have me a custom physics-based engine dynamics. Yeah, you can actually. I've got enough screen real estate that I can actually leave that window on there while we land. So I've got there. I'm gonna leave it there. I don't know if you can actually see the text. It's probably too small. I'll cut off a little bit of the localizer text there. Actually, I've got enough real estate there. Cool. Start decelerating here. Go to 160. 160 to 4. Yes, checked. As soon as I put the gear down, you'll see the first officer turn on the nose on taxi recog lights. And turn on the rest of the landing lights there. And when I put the flaps to 35, you'll see him do a anti-skid test. 30. So anti-skid and test. You push the button there. Make sure you got the anti-skid operational. So there we go. 160. And just do 1080p. And once I select landing flaps, he should arm the thrust reversers for me. There we go, there's 4 miles. And then select flaps 45. Arm the thrust reversers. And landing checklist.
Before landing checklist. Landing gear lever.
Down.
Nose steer.
Armed.
Anti-skid.
Tested.
Passenger signs.
1,000.
On.
Wing, cowl anti-ice.
Not required.
Continuous ignition.
Is on.
Thrust reversers.
Are armed.
Spoilers.
Are stowed. And auto.
Flaps.
45.
CAS.
Checked.
Before landing checklist complete. After landing checklist next.
Okay, so go ahead and kill the autopilot here. And I'm gonna get rid of the flight director. And we're just gonna look and point the flight path vector right at the runway there. And that's where we're flying. The beauty of a flight path vector. On a HUD.
500.
There we go, 500 feet. I should have set the minimums here, but we're already visuals, who cares? A little bit, it's just lining up that 3-degree mark with the pappies. That means we're perfectly on path. Okay, getting ready to pull
100.
speed brakes.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Speed brakes up, thrust reverse. And there we go. Reverse idle. This will change over to our taxi chart momentarily here. And we even made the high speed here nicely, what I planned, Alpha 2. And you can see they're on the engine debug. The thrust reversers are still out, so I'm going to stow them. As I vacate the runway here, I'm going to put the anti-collision lights off. There they go. And I can tell them to clear up the rest of the aircraft all the way. So, just so we can actually watch the thing. There are the engine display here, don't need you. So to get them to do the rest of the items after landing, you just stow the spoilers. So, retract the flaps and get all the stuff here cleared up. Good, there we go. After landing stuff completed.
After landing checklist. Landing pulse. Record lights.
Yes, those are mine, so
Anti-collision lights.
are off,
Continuous ignition.
off,
Windshield heat.
in norm, or rather in low,
Probes.
off,
Wing anti-ice.
is off,
Cowl anti-ice.
off,
Spoilers.
are stowed,
Flaps.
are 0,
ATC. TCAS.
altitude on. The first officer did that for me.
Radar mode.
Now, radar mode is not simulated yet.
After landing checklist complete. Engine shutdown checklist next.
So, let's have a look. Where are we? I'm going to switch the ICAS over to there. I'm going to bring up charts on this side. Get rid of this. And I'm going to scroll you over down to the aerodrome chart. Zoom in. So we're looking to turn right on Alpha and Whiskey. Oh, it'll be a sharp turn. We're looking to make a right turn here. Why? How did it? Oh my. Cool. I'll take a right. One whole zoom level, yes. I know. It's stupid, but there's only one. Yeah, this is as far as it goes. You can't zoom in anymore. Only 1 or 2. I keep it like this, I guess. I've got nice visibility on it. Get a little bit of gas. Max 30 knots, sure. It looks so fast when you're so low to the ground, huh? Now I don't have to do anything because the engines, the idle thrust of the engines is so high that haven't you guys an agreement already in place for this? We seriously had a chat about it, and she will give me an entire weekend. What she doesn't know is that the saved up extra hours I'm going to do without her knowing. Still in home office for such purposes. Okay, so here's uniform, and we want to go to whiskey. The reason I'm sort of reaching over is because I've got a brake axis configured on the stick here, and I didn't want to pull out another controls. I guess I could. So where do we park here? Here's whiskey. We don't need this anymore. Apron. Okay. I guess we'll just stick it right in front of the door. Or something. I don't know. That looks like a parking lot, so I'm not gonna go there. Maybe here. Looks like a valid taxiway, so go ahead and stick it over here. Around back. Huh. Probably should have kept on driving, huh? I see. Well, I'm gonna do a turnaround here then. Where the ramp starts. Which I have under Vulcan. Oh, interesting. Never seen those. So let's turn here. This Pilsner says that we gotta go around back. Let's do that. Cool, so to the left here is what he says. There's a little tiller on the side. That's how you steer the airplane actually on the ground. So left or right? Yeah, left looks a little bit more inviting. Seeing the small delay the compass throws, start turning, yeah. The avionics has to make sense of the inputs, huh? Same thing on the HUD here. Yeah, sure, let's turn around here somewhere. This looks official. So get the light off there. officer, and it looks like you're parking a CL650 delivery center. Yes, sir. So go ahead and hit the parking brake on. And normally we do your checklist here, so let's do that.
Engine shutdown checklist. Taxi lights.
Off.
Parking brake.
Set.
Reverse thrust.
Stowed.
Generators 1 and 2.
Off.
Engine 2 shutdown.
Engine 2, bye-bye.
Fuel boost pumps.
I'm gonna leave them on. I want the automatic first officer to take care of them for me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the power here on the other engine, and you'll see him configure the airplane for shutdown.
Shutdown actions.
And there we go. So the first officer has turned on the AC/DC utility, shut off any ignition, fuel boost pumps, 14 stage, shut off the windshield heat, seatbelt signs, and beacon. And what's he done also? He's also killed the nose wheel steering, disarmed thrust reverse, and turned off the transponder. Need to be off for 3 minutes. I have no idea, Captain Crash, because I mean, it's not really all that much of an electrical load. There is no immediate reason I can discern.
Fuel system.
It's checked.
Engine 1 shutdown.
Yeah, engine 1 is shut down. Engine cabin 3 minutes to power down before AC power is removed. Oh, there you go. Much on there, but it's on the checklist. Oh, I see. So it's probably for cabin crap.
Check ITT. Below 350 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, sure. We would check that. I'm gonna put this back over to the normal way the ICAS is supposed to look.
Anti-ice.
Is off.
14th stage.
Closed.
Beacon.
Off.
Nose steer.
Is off.
ATCT CAS.
Is 0 and standby. Or standby and 0.
Park and brake if chocked.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and request the chocks. Means I can go ahead and push this in.
Passenger signs.
Or off.
Cabin differential.
Is 0.
Engine shutdown checklist complete. Securing checklist next.
Yeah, there we go. This shutdown checklist start if the parking brake is set, just in case there's a long taxi. No. You manually have to invoke the checklist. You don't wait for that time. Then when you get all kinds of strange cabin things, like lights and screen anomalies happening on the next startup. Okay, CL650. That's one of those things that's a little bit difficult to replicate in a simulator, because that really depends on quirks and bugs of software and various cabin utilities and stuff. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and have some fun. I'm gonna go and reposition the aircraft to a new location, and I'm gonna go to the bathroom. So I'll see you in 5 minutes while the thing is repositioning. We'll see you in a little bit. Don't go anywhere. Continuing on. Alrighty, let's get back in the saddle. Let me see. Alrighty. We're gonna sit, even though I'm at a different location currently, we're gonna think of it as being in the same spot. So I think you would still do the engine fire tests.
Jet pipe overheat.
Cool. Alrighty. And AP is going to be available anytime now. There it is. Lovely stuff. We got the nav lights on, and let's go. Back you away for a minute. For a hot minute. Yes. Did I actually fire off this flight plan? No, I didn't. Or let's go like that and generate. I don't even need ETOPS planning, so just quickly finishing up the flight plan here. So today I wanted to do a quick test for high altitude performance. Actually, are we even within limits? I'm flying real weather. Let me just quickly check here. Because, well, let's go. Flight plan. Actually, no, not that. Go to route menu. Do we have data link actually? Data link, yes we do. There's no com message here, so we do have data link, but we might only have SATCOM. Yeah, no VHF data link here, so we are running on SATCOM currently. Good stuff. Have you ever tried doing a really low vis approach in this thing? Think? Intel FX O's? I mean, this thing is too capable. That's more of a test of piloting skill than the airplane itself. The airplane's going to fly just based off of instruments. It doesn't really fly based on visual. 650 is my fin number. Go. With HUD accuracy and stuff. Well, I mean, it is conformal, so it is accurate in that respect, I guess. So, SCAR to SLLP. Some of you might already be giggling. What is SLLP? Tried a few Cat 2 approaches and they're pretty accurate. Can we do a landing with gusty conditions, make the autopilot work for its money? Let me actually see if there's gusting conditions already at the airport. I didn't have to do anything. Yeah, it's wind's gusting. Gonna be sporty. Okay, it's Bagger UM664 to PAS. Activate that secondary flight plan. Execute. And then, what did I want to do for cruise altitude and stuff? I want to go to Perfinet. Gonna pull the sensed fuel quantity. Yep, it's gonna be sporty. I should put in like a bot or something so people can pull up a METAR, but then again, I only fly so little, it doesn't really make a difference. It's like you read my mind. Yeah, but you know what that airport is. Go to weather, request terminal weather. SCAR is where we are. SLLP. We should be good on the pressure altitude, but you'll see what I mean. Because check this. Is this gonna work? Yeah, there we go. Because SLLP, that is La Paz. Well, night walk or 1H. That's good. 12 hours real time on my PPL. Yeah, because La Paz is at an elevation of 13,000 feet. Yes. Okay, there we go. Finally got the weather in. Let's have a look. SLLP. So we got high pressure. Temperature's okay. It will be that Bolivia. SLLPs, I think, yeah, is it Bolivia or Chile? I'm not entirely sure. I'd be lying if I said I knew. I think it's Bolivia, isn't it? Yes, it is in Bolivia. We're flying from Chile over to Bolivia. So QNH 1036 at our destination. How's the pressure here? It's actually pretty low. Ah, nice. So we got somebody local, reasonably local. So 1014. I actually got to switch over the avionics here from pressure from inches to HPA. I'll go to here, switch this over. That's all taken care of. Now we go up to here to baro setting 1014. And this guy he displays at the same time. So all you got to do is just roll this until it reads 1014 up there. They have been to La Paz, pretty much a dead volcano. Yeah. Cool. And other than that, wind is out of the southwest. 1710, QNH 1014. Good stuff. So, that is all checked. Are we going to fly with payload? Yes, we are, of course. Now we already have somebody in, so that's all good. Well, still the same payload in fact. So it's going to be 3 people, 200 pounds of whatever. Go to the takeoff performance. So we got a temperature of 17. Winds are 220 at 10, I think. 220 at 11. That's the ATS self-test. Scrolling by there. 20 at 11. Now for departure runway, it's going to be, there's a north-south runway here, if I remember right. I'm just going to fiddle around with the charts here. Yeah, there's a north-south runway, so this pretty much we'd want to go from the north, which means I'm just going to quickly check here on Navigraph on my browser just to check which SID might apply for us. Our initial waypoint is Vagger. There's probably going to be some sort of a Vagger type departure, something like that. Close. I'm looking at the wrong airport. So, this SCAR SID Vagger 1 RNAV departure. Perfect. One absolutely totally works. Getting good for GA flying, default avionics, and C1852 model also good. Well, good thing. At or above 5,000. Packing. Good stuff. RNAV departure. Good. Lovely, lovely. Let's hop back in here. Departure, runway 20. Vagger 1 departure. Execute. Legs. 5,000 or above. Bring this over to the SID. You'll be able to see it. Not a georeference SID. Interesting. Or, no, we are already aligned, so this is not a georeference SID. Interesting. Or georeference chart anyway. Yeah, not to scale, says right there. Really looking back to get into the groove since it's been over a year since my last lesson. Ah, yeah, interesting. Hey, Puff MTD, welcome. Wondering which one would be more beneficial. X-Plane and P3D have the better detailed planes, but MSFS scenery helps in flying BFR. It's pretty scenery, for sure. Well, 180 or above, flight level 210 or above. So 180 above, 210 above, 290 is our cruise, 290, 290, and then PAS is at the field. Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and throw in some sort of a squawk code, just so we got something in there. Good. That's all taken care of. So, Perfinet. I'm happy with all of those. Takeoff. All of that is set up. Good stuff. We got our V speeds. Send those over to the EFIS. And those are going to appear up here. If I send them again, you'll see how they sort of sequence. Let me just change something so that they get deleted. So yeah, if I send them over, they'll appear one by one because that's how the FMS is sending them out in individual data words. And wait, so good. You can click all the buttons and everything like IRL. Yeah. Looks amazing. Once playing in shared cockpit will be one of the best experiences in flights we can get. Can't wait, amazing work. Yeah, it's not real to sim. It's not going to be probably out with the shared functionality right away, but it's going to be there eventually. Because it's just, there's just so much work to do to get all that ready. But yes, it is going to be there. And funny as well, if I go ahead and delete it, delete the flight, or delete the speed, the constraints here, I don't know, like enter some sort of a whatever kind of values and change something, then they'll delete individually one by one as well. Cool. Actually, my trim is going to be more like somewhere about, actually fairly low trim. I need to change some of the default CG stuff in Plane Maker. But yeah, 6.0. Your real life flying as well? No. Well, I mean, I'm a private pilot, but I don't fly commercial. As in, I'm not a commercial pilot. I guess you were asking about whether I'm a private. Yes, I am a private pilot, yes. Got the bill to prove it. As in, the cost of training here in Europe is, well, you don't want to know. Expensive as all hell. No, I haven't, just single. You know how much it costs to rent a dual engine airplane? Holy moly. It's expensive, super expensive as is. Just single engine. Dual is double. Oh, you cheap. Yeah, ZFX, it's pretty much the same as where I got, yeah. It was about 10K to get a PPL. Nightwalker, that would be cheap here for wet. In my case, it'd be 400 euros plus per hour. Wet. About 195, 200 for a single. So, where are you located in Europe? In Europe. I don't want to be talking about that on stream. 186 gigabytes of your streams recordings. What? Why would you download the streams? They're on YouTube. You don't need to download them, man. Streams recordings. Okay. Anyway, TAF is Cav okay. Yeah, it's essentially good weather here. Down here. Cool. And then this guy's gonna be fun. 1036. Actually, so for funsies, I'm gonna just do a quick computation because the airplane is limited to 14,000 feet pressure altitude. So to make sure I'm not gonna be over that, I'm gonna go into approach. And for this, I'm going to enter 1036 at our destination. Yeah, it's going to be a bit pissed off when I do that. So, and it's 15 degrees Celsius. But yeah, we're going to be, the temperature doesn't actually affect us. But pressure altitude, we are going to be good. First ones are not on YouTube. Ah, I see. Oh. Yeah, so we should be good. Pressure wise, it's not going to be a problem. Yeah, here's the airport's normal physical elevation. And Nightwalker, thanks for following. Welcome aboard. Okay, takeoff. We're gonna go reset this back in. 17. Good stuff. So, get going. Not gonna do all the checklists here. I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna set the airplane up quickly for memory. Actually, no, I don't need those yet. Let it cool the cabin down. We'll be getting the new engine simulation TBM, yes. All this, the code that drives the engine simulation here is going to be backported to the TBM, and I have to gonna work out a new engine model for the TBM because this is very much dependent on physical characteristics of the engine, because like literally it iterates through the compressor maps to figure out pressure ratios in the engine and then energy consumption and all that good stuff. But yeah, it is going to be making its way to the TBM as well. What did I want to do here? Right, there was a new thing. Well, actually not in this part. It's in here. I did some debugging on the cabin pressure controller, CPC. And so that guy is the one who controls the pressurization. And there's a fairly, there's a fair amount of impatient to beta test that one. Yep, we'll do over. So it has a fair amount of logic in it for the CPC to support high altitude operations. So I'm going to talk you through that. So normally what the CPC does, the cabin pressure controller, is after you take off, the CPC sits in what they call takeoff mode. Well, let me start from the top. On the ground, the CPC is in ground mode, right? So it basically sits there, outflow valves fully opened, just, ventilate the cabin for maximum ventilation. Whatever pressure differential builds up, there's basically no pressure differential right now, even though we got both packs pushing air in. There's a little bit of pressure differential, but very, very little, just because of flow of air. So there's like, let's see, 0.04 psi delta just because of the packs. If I switch off one of the packs, we'll see this will drop down to 0.01 psi delta. Switch off both of them, goes to 0 psi delta. That's just a matter of differential pressure flow. There's got to be a slight differential pressure flow. There's got to be a slight pressure differential to actually get air escaping out of the outflow valves. Naturally, the air needs a push. It has mass. So the cabin pressure controller here, what it does is, in ground mode, it has the valves fully open. Now, when actually, I might be able to do that by just pushing. No, there we go. So I managed to switch it over into takeoff mode. You can see here it's starting to close up the outflow valves and simulate it, so to speak. There's a micro switch inside of the throttles, and so once you push them past a certain point, CPC goes into takeoff mode, and you'll notice that it starts generating a differential pressure. So it thinks that we took off at 149 feet, and so it's aiming to establish a, let me think, 200 feet, yes, 200 feet below our takeoff altitude. So it's basically generating a slight differential pressure on takeoff as you're rolling down the runway. It's essentially what it's doing is it's trying to establish a regulating state such that when you pop out of the ground, when you pop up off the ground, the valves are not fully open, and all of a sudden you get like, as the airplane starts climbing at like 2,000, 3,000 feet a minute, you don't suddenly get a 2,000 foot per minute spike in the cabin climb rate. Rather, the valves are already partially in regulating mode, and so you're not going to get a huge differential. Now, what happens if you reject the takeoff here? Reject the takeoff, you'll see the pressurization controller goes to takeoff abort mode. And I can put it back into takeoff mode and back into takeoff abort mode. And you'll notice here it changes the set target. So altitude target, it changes back to current pressure elevation or pressure altitude of the aircraft. And what it then does, instead of reopening the valves, right away fully, well, let's let it, fully get there where it wants to be. We've got a slight pressure differential in the cabin. If it just suddenly slammed the valves fully open, you get a climb rate spike that might be a little bit unpleasant, on the ears and stuff. To avoid doing that, when it goes into takeoff abort mode, I pulled back to idle. Here it goes into takeoff abort mode. It targets the current altitude of the aircraft, but at a normal regulated climb rate, and it does that for 1 minute. So it'll climb the cabin slowly for 1 minute to get up to our desired aircraft current pressure altitude, and essentially it's letting out any kind of pressure that had built up in the cabin at a slow rate. And there we go. It switched over to the ground. Maybe it was only 30 seconds. And once the pressure differential is gone, it reopens the valves. So again, put it in takeoff mode. It starts closing up the valves, establishing a differential or a positive regulation on the valves there. And if we now, took off, it would be fine. And the same thing when I put it into takeoff abort mode, it'll start a slow cabin climb here on the rate. You'll see up here as well over here. And when it's gone out of takeoff abort mode, it'll fully open up the valves. There we go, round. Valves are fully open, and there was essentially no pressure spike. Once it's in takeoff mode and you lift off, the CPC also gets a signal from the PSEU, the Proximity Sensing Electronic Unit, which is essentially the gear control system. And the PSEU sends it a signal, weight on wheels is opened, so airplane has taken off. That will make the CPC memorize the current altitude as the takeoff altitude, and then it waits for either 10 minutes to have elapsed, so 10, 2 times 5, or you have climbed more than 6,000 feet above field elevation, at which point it will transition into flight mode from takeoff. And in takeoff mode, crucially, what it does is it keeps the cabin 200 feet below the takeoff altitude. The idea being is that if within the first 10 minutes you need to quickly turn around and come back, or within the first 6,000 feet you turn around and come back, the idea is that you have zero cabin differential. If, for example, you have a crash, you need a quick turn back or something, there is no differential pressure effectively in the cabin. This is going to be like 0.1 or something. Even if there's even if the regulation didn't work somehow, you'd have essentially, if after you land, there's no depressurization time, you can immediately open a door and run out of the airplane, quickly evacuate. Now, when you pass that 6,000 feet or 10 minutes, whichever comes first, it's going to switch over into flight mode, and it's going to start changing this altitude target based on our current flight altitude. So this is essentially going to slowly, iteratively come up as we climb with the airplane. It's going to sort of, in proportion to where the airplane is, it's going to sort of follow you up with the altitude it's trying to regulate to, except it also looks at your preset landing altitude here on the selector, and you'll see if I roll this up, you'll see here it slowly measures up to what the setting is on the needle there. And so if I, for example, set it to like I'm going to actually be landing at 6,000 feet, it's gonna regulate the cabin to at least 6,000 feet flight altitude, even if I'm a little bit lower, because that's going to be our landing elevation, right? So we're going to climb above 6,000 feet, and then when we land at 6,000 feet, there's going to be no need for any extra depressurization or cabin descent or anything. Let's say 6,000 feet will be achieved at something like flight level 350 of flight altitude. So if we're going to be flying below that, there's going to be no change in cabin altitude, perceived cabin pressure inside. All that's going to change is the differential is going to go to 0 as we approach to land. Now there's a different mode when you go very, very high. The aircraft is capable of flying, you're landing at very high level airport. and the threshold is 8,000 feet. So if I set it to 8,000 feet, that is the highest the cabin pressurization controller is going to be allowed to keep the cabin at. So say for instance we're going to be landing at La Paz, which is at 13,300, about there, maybe like there. And in this mode, the difference is the cabin pressure controller is going to climb the cabin, climb, but it's going to stop at 8,000 feet. It is not allowed to put the cabin above 8,000 feet in normal flight mode. So as we, climb up, even if we're, even though our landing elevation is higher than that, it's going to keep the cabin at 8,000 feet. But obviously, if we want to land at 13,000 feet, at some point the cabin pressure has to be put up to 13,000 feet. So how does that happen? So the pressurization controller, what it does is it looks at your flight altitude. So it looks at essentially what your altimeter here is measuring. And once it detects that you have descended below flight level 250, it's going to start climbing the cabin altitude up to your landing altitude at an elevated rate, so faster than usual. It'll do it, I think, at like 700 feet per minute or 800 feet per minute. It'll basically meet you quickly at your preset target altitude. Now, those of you that are familiar with all kinds of warning systems, you'll know that when this thing goes above 10,000 feet, you normally get a warning, cabin pressure. There is a separate, CPAM is going to be pissed, yeah. So the CPAM, well, the CPAM only sends data, right? But there's a separate piece of wire, there's a separate signal that comes out of the CPC and goes into the data concentrator units and then eventually into the ICAS and into the displays here that sets the aircraft cabin into high altitude mode. So when the thing starts descending, you'll see this high alt inhibit go from no to yes, and that means it has raised the maximum warning altitude from 10,000 feet to 14,500 feet. So it's not going to issue the red warning until 14.5 in the cabin. That changes our set point. Now, you're not supposed to, obviously hang out at that kind of a level. High altitude operations, you got to know what you're doing. But the airplane, that's how the thing works. So even though I've got 13.3 set here for landing elevation, not actually going to climb the cabin above 8,000 feet while I'm en route. Now I might have to hold because unfortunately this is a fairly short flight, so I might have to mess about with it a little bit. Also, I gotta set the target barrel pressure once I'm in flight. So before I land, I'm gonna have to roll the B selector here, which is this needle, this bottom needle here. I'm gonna have to roll that one up to set the target elevation. Also prevents the mask from dropping. Yes, cabin crash. That all happens interlinked together. There is a separate line that goes to the control wiring here. Because otherwise, yeah, you'd get the mask dropping at 10,500 or something thereabouts. That'd be bad. Well, it would be slightly disconcerting to the passengers, I would imagine. So 2994 is our current elevation here. I'm just going to set this one up one click. So 29945, whatever. That's about currently what our barrel pressure is. So this is just correcting the pressure altitude selector here for the relevant airport pressure. Right now I've got it set to my departure airport because that's the one I would be returning to if I had an emergency. And then in flight, in cruise, we're going to set this up higher to match up with our 1034, was our 1036 is our destination airport pressure. And yes, this is only in inches, bare in inches of mercury. So to figure out what the value should be in there, I'm just going to use this guy here. So I'm just going to go and roll him up to 1036, as I think it said. Yes, 1036 until it reads up here 1036. So 3058 is what I would have to set up on the subscale here. And This is gonna go to 10142994. Good stuff. I'm just gonna use the standby instrument as a calculator. Cool. I'm burning fuel here. Ain't got much fuel on board anyway, but let's get going. Alrighty. Rid of you. Okay, beacon on. Fuel boat, boost pumps on. Ignition B. Alright, now let's do for the other flight. We're gonna do ignition A. Okay. Seatbelts on. All the other crap here is looking good. I'm gonna set the parking brake. So brakes got to be depressed for the parking brake to work. And actually, I also got to check that I've got pressurization for the hydraulics, because without it, ain't gonna much happen for the parking brake either. Good. System 3 is pressurized. Rock and roll. Hey, hey, fancy rudder. Yes. That move, yes. They're already in the build, Captain Crash. If you want to update, it's already in the beta build. I pushed them just before the stream. So just make sure you got pressure in the system. Alrighty. And for this, I'm going to pre-select what is our initial top altitude, does it say for the SID? Transition 10,000, GNSS required, transition level by ATC, minimum climb gradients that are above 18,000, and then according to ATC clearance. Let's say 18,000 is our initial. I like the EGT increase on the APU as the hydraulics pressurize. Well, I mean, it's all hanging together, right? That's because of electrical load. Yes. Same thing if I pressurize the rest of the hydraulics here. So in auto, the system 1B and 2B pumps only come on when the flaps are out. But I can manually run them and you'll see a pressure, you'll see an EGT rise here. And that is, the pressure has reached target values. It's all done. Now they're just maintaining this. That doesn't take anywhere near as much energy. Cool. Let's go. There we go. That was just an IRS realignment. So got the parking brake set. We gotta go make sure that the chocks are away. Also gonna roll this guy up to 180 just for initial. Let's go. Beacon on, seatbelts on, doors are closed. Rock and roll. I'm gonna have to turn around myself here. Get start. Get the other one. You can do it like this as well. Just dragging the lever itself. Alrighty, let the first officer do his job.
After start actions.
Alrighty, and we are configured for taxi. Just get the trims out of the way here. That's my job. Hold the Turn up a little bit. God, Emperor wanted to push. Did I? There we go. So, probe heat's on, reverser's on, parking brake is on. That's what I want to see. So, I'm going to make a turn around here. And I'm going to turn left. Let's go. Taxi light on. Brakes off. Would have expected to start moving. There we go. It's just a little bit of stickiness there on the ground, X-plane ground model. And it's going to turn right here. That. Going to be a right turn here. And they've also, the first officer has also set up the transponder for me. We're ready squawking. We're going to move about. So they've got it set to altitude on. And the first officer understands if you're lining up on a runway that isn't your departure runway, so it's not going to turn on, you know, your probe heats and that kind of stuff, unless it's actually the runway that you've got set up in the FMS as your departure runway. Otherwise, all it does, it understands if you're crossing a runway that isn't your departure runway, it's going to switch on the anti-collision light, and that's it, nothing more. It's reasonably smart. So, I'm going to push here for toga mode, takeoff. I'm going to arm LNAV, I'm going to arm VNAV, and yeah, that's it, basically, at this point. Just sit there and let the thing roll down a runway, or down the taxiway, actually, not yet down a runway. Why is my stream quality so potato? Much potato. Oh, 121 for V1. I'm sorry, 112 for V1. VR is 121. Replaces required reading the manual in terms of starting procedures. Yeah, pretty much, El Promo. I mean, it's not, there's really not that much to it, right? Fuel boost pumps and arm the ignition. That's it. It's, in fact, by the way, it's surprisingly similar to the TBM. Yeah, there's wind coming from the left here, so it's going to be wind from the right on the runway. Yoke, takeoff config okay, so we can go ahead and line up. Let the first officer do their thing. Just going to do the pre-flight, before takeoff checklist quickly then, once we're lined up. Or as we're lining up. Runway 20. Check final. Good stuff. Yay. And
Flight. Taxi check. Before takeoff checklist. Passenger signs
are on.
Anti-collision lights
Is on.
Probes
Are on.
Windshield heat
High.
Wing and cowl anti-ice
Not required.
Continuous ignition
On.
ATCT CAS
Is TARA.
Supplemental ground wing anti-ice panel
This lights out.
CAS takeoff config OK.
That was display. I just put the parking brake on, so but put off the parking brake there. There we go. Takeoff config okay.
Landing pulse record lights
I keep forgetting those. There we go.
Before takeoff checklist complete. After takeoff checklist next.
Let's go. We're looking for 90.6 on the N1s. Takeoff power. Feeling a little bit of wind coming from the right. The lineup was a little bit poor there. 80 knots. Thrust is set. V1 and rotate. Gonna get a little bit of wind lift there. Yes, we did. Gear up. And first officer switches off the nose lights. Okay. Get that autopilot in there. And I'm going to go flight level change here. Cool. We're 2,000 feet above, so we can go ahead and accelerate. Flaps up. LNAV has captured. And select thrust limit for climb. That'll be signal for the first officer to start
After takeoff
reconfiguring the aircraft. So let's let him do his thing. There we go. After takeoff actions are complete, I'm going to set this up to 250. We got to be at 5,000 at Packin, which we are easily able to do.
After takeoff checklist. Landing gear.
Is up.
Flaps.
Actually, going to turn off the landing lights. 0
Thrust reversers.
are disarmed.
Ignition.
Is off.
Pressurization.
Is checked. We're pressurizing. All good.
Pax transition.
Completed.
N1.
Is climb.
APU generator.
Off.
APU.
Shut down.
Passenger signs.
Are going to auto, actually. Yeah, that's good.
CAS.
Is checked.
After takeoff checklist complete.
Does the Challenger have derated takeoffs? Not sure if the term correctly is flex. So it's a complicated subject in Teleflex for weird reasons. You would think that it'd be straightforward, but it isn't. Let me just quickly switch this over to FMS speed. And we're also gonna, we've already passed the takeoff mode here on the pressurization system, so you'll see now the pressurization controller has switched itself into flight mode and it's targeting 8,000 feet already because it sees that we're going to be in high altitude mode. So 13,300 are set target landing altitude, but it's not going to go above 8,000 feet until we hit cruise and then start coming down through flight level 250 to actually start coming down onto our preset target. I'm also going to quickly, so just recompute. We know the pressurization or the pressure target at the destination is 1036, so I'm just going to set this over to quickly check. 1036 would correspond to, I don't know, somewhere 3058, 3059, one of those. So 3060, give or take. So that's what we got to set here on the B subscale. So 30, and about there. Oh, get rid of this. Actually, I'm going to set you over. We're already past there, so we're going to go to standard and standard. Get rid of this, and yeah. All right, just sit back and watch the pressurization control do stuff. Do its thing. You can see this is the rate target that it is aiming for, and it is the current rate achieved is like 500 somewhere thereabouts. You know, it's oscillating with just, you know, minor fluctuations in airflow and minor positions of the valve, just fractions of a millimeter in the pressurization systems makes a big difference. So it's the pressurization controller controls this here valve, the electro-pneumatic valve. That's what it's changing. It's essentially changing the amount of open space there. And I gotta keep climbing here. So come back to flight level change. We're gonna go right up to our cruise altitude, flight level 290. There we go. And it changes the area of the valve here to control the amount of vacuum in the what they call the actuator chamber back here on the back side of the valve. That's what basically pulls, sort of sucks the valve open or closed up against the closing spring. So to your question about flex modes, yes, it does have a flex mode. I'm talking about airplane stuff, and I'm not checking that we're actually flying the correct path here, but we are. And I don't need speed and altitude constraint anymore. 18 or above, 210 or above, we're going to be good. We're going to hit it way before even that. So, flex mode. Yes, it does have a flex mode. It is a manufacturer option, or rather an operator option, I'm sorry. So you can option out the airplane with flex mode in it. But there's a trick, or rather there's a catch. When Bombardier designed the Challenger 650, they wanted it to be an upgrade on the Challenger 605. They wanted essentially to be able to say that the aircraft has higher thrust than Challenger 605, because the Challenger 605 is limited to, if we bring up the engines here, let's see, I've got this in kilonewtons. Okay, cool. So the Challenger 605 is limited to 38.8 kilonewtons takeoff thrust, but the engines can go harder. They have what they call automatic performance reserve, APR. In fact, that was the APR arm there. That is normally only supposed to be used for engine out conditions. So the APR thrust is 41 kilonewtons instead of 38.8. And give or take, it's about 5% more that the aircraft can do, 6% thereabouts. But normally it is not only available when you're in an emergency. So Bombardier's brilliant idea was, how about we instead make it available all the time for all takeoffs? And that was what the flex mode, or that's one of the pieces of functionality that the flex mode gives you here. And you'd have a second pager on the thrust limit page where you enter your flex and all that good stuff. And that also lets you select MTO as max takeoff for takeoff thrust. So you'd get up to 41 kilonewtons for normal takeoff thrust. But obviously running the engines that way would shorten your service interval, because you're stressing out the componentry a lot more. I mean, look at this. We're doing just barely short of the temperature limit here. It's fairly warm outside, ISO plus 12 at high altitude, flight level 260. And we're running at 1270 degrees Celsius into the high pressure turbines. That is essentially the engine's design point for limiting thrust, for limiting temperature rather. When you're running the flex mode option, software option, yes, you can both derate lower, but you can also uprate higher. And for some reason, the software does not track which one you've used. There is no maintenance tracker in the airplane. So, ironically, by installing the flex software option in the flight management system to give you reduced takeoff thrust, the option of reduced takeoff thrust, it also gives you the option for increased takeoff thrust. And since they cannot tell which one you've been using, ironically, your service intervals actually shorten. Your inspection intervals, more accurately, not service intervals, but your inspection intervals actually shorten. So, in a sense, it's the reverse of what you thought you were going to get. You thought you were going to get, more engine life. In actuality, you might actually, get more engine life practically long term, but your service intervals are going to be shortened. Therefore, your operating expenses are going to go up. But at least it saves fuel, right? Yeah, I guess in some sense it saves fuel. That's not really clever. That is the way it was explained to me. I hope I wasn't, pulled a fib, but I can see how that'd be the problem. Or is it by not much? It doesn't really save all that much fuel, no, in IntelliFX. Not that people using private jet for travel think too much about about fuel use anyway. Yeah, it makes sense for airlines that are flying, and there we go. You see that Chilean plateau here, rising up from the sea, just going up and up and up and up, and that's it. It's not going to go down anymore. I mean, it does way away, but yeah, we're going to be landing on that plateau. And you can even see it on the synthetic vision here. It shows as sort of gray. It's because it's above like 10,000 feet elevation or something. Yeah, so the amount of fuel it saves is relatively minor. You're talking, 1 or 2%, which for an airline, not for millionaires or billionaires, count their dollars more than anyway. Yeah, I guess. For an airline, saving a couple of percent of fuel, or 1 or 2% of fuel, is non-trivial, right? Probably more like a fraction of a percent, but even then, you're talking savings of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars per airframe, probably. Not for a business jet. You'll notice we run the APU on takeoff and on approach. We really don't care about fuel use all that much. What we do care about is runway performance, and that is probably why Bombardier did it that way, because the Challenger, I mean, it's okay runway performance, but it's not stellar. Heavily loaded, this thing eats up runway fast. The takeoff rolls can be pretty significant. This poor guy's kind of misaligned. Oh, he's gonna fix himself. I'm gonna cage him. There you go. Yeah, so the runway performance of the Challenger ain't all stellar, so yeah. There you go. Now you know, I guess. An engineering fiasco driven by marketing department, where they could say the CL650 was new compared to the CL605, right? And I guess CL650 Pilot also gives you slightly better runway performance because you got more thrust, so theoretically they could put in the marketing that, oh no, we can totally make, 5,000 foot runway, 4,500 foot runway out of Santa Monica. We're totes, guys. Even though, would you actually do that? Probably not. Now, I will freely admit this thing doesn't have the runway performance of something like a Falcon 7X or 8X. Yes, unfortunately, it doesn't have that amount of excess performance, but it doesn't matter all that much. For some use cases, I guess. For the marketing people, I guess it does. We're G200 at Denver, 30 Celsius. Welcome to 707 Simulator V1 as the 8,000 foot marker goes by. Yeah, totally, it's all marketing. Santa Monica. Yeah. They did that publicity stunt by Dassault coming out of Santa Monica just before they shortened the runway and closed it to jets. Just they quickly wanted to get some marketing spiel out of that, but yeah. Now the CRJ200 is a fast Challenger. Like a Challenger has okay performance for a business jet. It's not stellar, but it's not poor either. It's pretty run of the mill these days. But put a couple extra tons on the thing, or hang on, Challenger's max takeoff gross is 48,000. CRJ's is like 52, 55,000, something like that. 55,000. Put an extra 5,000 pounds on this thing and weight. Give it barely more wing, and a lot more, 53,000. So a lot more fuselage. So you got a lot more drag, and it makes an okay performing Challenger perform like a piece of crap. I compare a CRJ to an overweight guy, a very overweight guy who hasn't hit the gym in years. So yeah. Anyway, enough CRJ crap talking. Let's have a look at the approaches there. I didn't want to push here, I wanted to push there. There's La Paz. How's our pressurization doing? See, still climbing to 7,400 feet. Ah, where aren't you? Ah, right, hang on, I know. It's regulating it to. So this is referenced to standard pressure 2992. So, yeah, the cabin pressure controller is automatically recomputing it to elevation. Yeah, see, it's because I've set up a non-standard pressure there. It thinks that we are in the cabin at 8,000 feet, but it's showing 7,400 feet because this is referenced to 2992. Should we be at 8,000 feet, 2992? We probably should, so this is a bug I need to fix. So into the list it goes. The CTC should target cabin to standard pressure and cruise. Good stuff. Now it still says high altitude inhibit no. We are in cruise phase, so CRZ phase yes. High alt phase, this is when we get down below 250, this is going to start saying landing. Or DP abort avail. Abort avail is the thing where it like returns back to the airport. We got some turbulence going. Not much. Yeah, if you want to rile up CL650 pilot, just ask him what this thing does. He'll tell you. Because it wastes pilot's time is basically what it does. And fuel. Let's have a look. Let's refresh the weather at SLLP. I don't want that airport anymore. Go ahead and fetch some new weather. For weather, SLLP refresh done. Hope it's not picking up the airplane noise too hard on the mic. 16 minus 13. Woo, boy, it's dry. 1035. So I'm going to use my little computer here. 1035 2956. So it's just going to be about one click back. And not the other way. Here. Need to make it windier. Wind has gone away. Has it? Oh no, it's still variable, 250340. Not gusting, it's not reporting a gust anymore, but it's gonna sway left and right, don't worry. They're reporting gusting there. I'm pretty sure X-Plane's gonna give us a little bit of turbulence over. Winds are actually now out of the northwest. So, here's the airport. We're gonna be landing runway 28, winds out of 300. Yeah, we're gonna be landing runway 28. So, we're going to go and have a look at some approaches. There aren't any. Lovely stuff. So everything's out of 10. Well, this is just about barely on our tailwind limit. So theoretically, we could still do it. Mandatory 14.5 of 9.8 tailwind. Yes. It's just barely within limits. So that'll be fun. Let's do it. Why not? So, see that initial flight level 180 or 18,000 feet. What's the transition altitude? Is it only 18? Well, that's some interesting crap. Manage levels by ATC. Sure, let's go. Let's do it. Predicted landing weight is 32,000. So I'm going to plug that into her. No, not that. Perf init. Perf menu. Approach. I'm gonna load in the approach. RNAV Yankee 10 via LP653. LP653, rather, yeah, sure. That, and that means I now got approach reference here. 300 at 10. OAT 16. And it was 1035 for the pressure. Yeah, tailwind 9. Theoretically doable. So let's go. Let's switch to balanced field length. 7,500 feet landing distance. And we're not very heavy. 4,500 feet actual landing distance. That should be good. Interesting, it's linked up the approach. Oh, hang on, it hasn't. So let's go direct to the initial approach fix. There we go. Now we actually got a top of descent that is actually kind of sensible. So let's go. You have kids. No, I don't. Cool. There's top of drop, 18,000. It's already pulling back on the speed there. Because we gotta be at 200 there. Holy moly. I was worried about an overspeed. Yeah, we're kind of driving a little bit sporty. You want mine? No, thanks. Got enough worries myself. We actually need to pull the speed brake not to overspeed here. Okay, full brake. This will be an interesting test. I'm gonna let the automatic first officer do everything. I'm gonna check the pressurization system here, how it performs. Hopefully I didn't screw it up. So flight altitude, when it gets below 25,000 feet, it should start the landing mode for pressurization. Let's go. Now the approach is going to happen really fast because at this altitude, that one, typical approach speed of one whatever. What is our approach speed here? 130. That's going to be more like 160, or more like 170 or something. So it's going to go quick. So 25, and there we go. Switch to landing. High altitude inhibit. It's targeting 13,100 feet. Added pressure, and it's going for it. Well, let's see what happens. And you can see it's targeting at an elevated rate of 700 feet per minute. And yeah, the cabin's going to go above 10,000 feet quite easily. Quite happily, and we shouldn't get any warnings or cautions or anything like that. Oh boy, it's having trouble slowing down at this kind of a high elevation, high altitude. And we might need to hold. Nah, we gotta be good. Interesting. I would never have expected having to start slowing down while cruise at flight level 290. That was a new one. This is view at 25, broken 20,000. It should have been 20,000 above the field, so like broken at 32,000, whatever. Dump the gear. Nah, that's not the way to do it. Besides, the gear limit speed is 200. So gear extension retraction is 197. I'd have to first slow down, dump the gear, and then speed up. We're on profile, so all the problem right now is just we're a little bit quick.
In range, start an APU.
See? We're about 10,000 feet or 9,000 feet above. So guy has started the APU there. I'm actually going to disable temp comp so it's not annoying me here because it's high temperature, so not a problem. X speed is noted. Pulling back on it, don't worry, we'll get there, We've already got all the brake out as we've got. Unfortunately, the airplane only has 2 dinky little speed brakes, so not like we can do much. We'll try, we'll give it a best shot. And once I reset the actual pressure, it's going to be a little bit of a murder. Why are you in, oh, right, QH. 1035. When I switch this over, probably going to piss it off with the, there we go. Actually, let's go and set you down like this. Yeah, when I changed the pressure, it dumped the V path because it just suddenly realized, holy crap, we're high. So I'm going to go into Prague. We're 400 feet high now. There we go, that's the initial. 15.8. Yeah, we're gonna get there. Going a little bit quick, but we'll get there. 3 miles. No, not yet. Okay, V path has captured. 14.5 is the fixed altitude here on the approach there for the final approach fix. There is us. 14.5 is mandatory here at LP657. There we go. We're below flap speed, so we can go ahead and stow the speed brake, and once I throw the flaps out, that's going to do a ton of drag. I'm going to slow down to 180 here. Get the landing lights up. Arm the approach mode. RMP arm. And we should be, now, we've more than 2 minutes have already passed since he started the APU, so why isn't he transitioned to the APU yet? Because the APU is limited to 15,000 feet for bleed extraction, so the co-pilot is waiting for 15,000, well 14,500 feet for turning on the bleeds. There we go, 14.5 is final approach altitude there. What was the minimum anyway? Oh, that's going to take a while to roll in. 13.490. I should have started before departure, probably rolling this reference in. Okay, hopefully we'll get there before the year's out. There we go, glide path capture. There's 6,000. We're halfway there. Holy shit, this totally needs a, you know, digital entry. 13, there we go. 12, 12.5, 13.490, 13.490, yes. Good stuff.
2,500.
Select. Just about on time. Cancel you. Misapproach is to 17.
Transition and bleeds onto APU.
Okay, he's just switching over to bleeds here. Okay. Well, let's bash some approach checklists out of the way, I guess.
Descent checklist.
Ah, whatever.
In range checklist. APU.
Yeah, whatever. Not gonna care about it. Not gonna worry about it. Okay, we got flaps 30. And get this slowed down to final approach speed here. Don't do what I did. Can't you click and hold? No. Well, unfortunately, you can't. Okay, flaps 45. Thrust reversers are armed. Ignition continuous. All the other crap is looking good. Gears down. Alrighty. And still, the cabin isn't even 1,000 feet away from us. Well, almost there. Minimums. There we go.
Minimums.
This was a sporty approach. Probably should have prepared better for it, huh? Now the flare is going to be tricky, because we're going to have to flare earlier than used to because of the extra inertia. We were doing 170 over the ground. Whoa, that was a tailwind shift.
50, 40, 30,
Saw that?
20, 10.
I know it reached pressure differential. Good, 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 good. 0.1 psi pressure differential. Holy moly, that was a wind shift. Okay, now let me bring up the charts here. What the hell's the wind doing here? Okay, take a left. Slow down a little bit more. Yes, the synthetic vision doesn't go all the way down to the ground. It stops like 100 or 50 feet above. Because it doesn't want to clip into the ground, obviously. Alrighty. So the speed brakes. Are we not yet away from the runway enough? Is this guy confused? He should have. Should have started the cleanup actions, but he's turned off the anti-collision lights. Interesting. Hold on, first officer, I gotta do your job for you then. And so flaps. Actually, I need these. And we're gonna go to tuning mode. Altitude only. Altitude on. Good. I'm gonna investigate why he didn't do anything. Oh. Hypoxic. Back to training for that co-pilot. Yeah. Was it because of somehow how I touched down or not? I don't know. Maybe that like bounce or something that confused the system. I have to check that. Shouldn't have, but you never know. What's the estimated SPO2 right now? Oh, by the way, we have only 0.1 psi delta, so its cabin pressurization system has done its job. Pressurization control, you can see, nicely got everything under control there. Hasn't even fully opened the valves, couldn't get it done. And my SPO2 level right now, cabin environment, no, not that one, sorry. It's, oh, it is there. Oh, oxygen system, there we go. At 95%. Wherever Tommy 1 anti-skid off besides maintenance. Generally, no cold stuff unless it is broken or inoperative. You could have it off for reasons such as your, anti-skid sensors are failed, and yes, I'm gonna check this calls for it. Now there should be somewhere we can park. Or park in front of that hangar. How about that? Now notice, because of the very high altitude, this is the engine idle. So when you're flying Challengers in real life, when you start up the engines, they usually train you to look for 246. So you're looking for 20 somethings on the N1, 400 something on the ATT, 60 something on the N2. But because we're at 13,000 feet, the engine actually adjusts its idle because of high altitude operations. And so at this high altitude, it has a completely different idle. 40% N1 is our idle here. Almost 40%. Funnily enough, that high idle results in identical idle thrust. So it's doing... Oh, well, actually it's doing a lot more here. It shouldn't have. Idle thrust should have been about 2 point something. Huh. I'm gonna have to look into that. It might actually be the correct behavior. We're gonna park next to that guy, sure. Go away, HUD. On the flip side, it taxis a lot better. Or rather, it taxis on its own. Is there even a taxiway to that part? Or am I taxiing completely wrong here? There doesn't even seem to be a way to get there. Let me actually pause this. Alright, you're supposed to go all the way around or something. I'll just cut across here. There's a... Oh, okay. The hell? Well, this is some weird mesh. There's probably military crap here. It looks fairly military, so... Yeah, let's park it over here. Yeah, here, somewhere. In front of that gate. So, do a turnaround on taxiway. Challenger is fairly skinny, so it can actually do that. If I was doing this IRL, I'd be on O2 from 100% from top of descent. Yeah, you kind of have to be used to these kinds of high elevation airports to operate reliably here. Interesting. I'm back up at 98%. Obviously, your SpO2 level is going to fluctuate over time. So. Hello. Yeah, let's park here. The cabin altitude limit for cruise. Yeah. Oh, perhaps. Depends on how you're operating this. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could. Well, I don't have 3D in here, but I could. Okay. Freeze off. So, are you gonna do the after landing crap or after shutdown? He's gonna wait until we are below 25% N2. Then he's gonna do it. Hopefully.
Shutdown actions.
Cool. Well, this was fun. 600 degrees on the APU. Oof. Quite a load on board thing. Yeah, I'm having to run pretty hard. Toasty, yeah. I'm having to run pretty hard to get the kinds of bleeds extraction that we're doing to it, so... And the engine start is pretty slow here. I tested that before. Takes a good while to get going. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up here, folks. I'll see you all next time. We're gonna have some more fun flights, and yeah, I'll see you around the bend. Take care, and see you all.